Good evening. I'm calling to order the March 31st, 2026 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. And before we get to the joint meeting with the school committee, first item on the agenda is public comment. And this is an opportunity for members of the public to offer a comment on a matter that's not on the printed agenda. And we try to keep public comment to no more than 3 minutes, and it's not intended as a back and forth, rather just an opportunity for someone to offer comment. It looks like our town clerk, Mr. Hegarty, would like to offer a comment.
Good evening, Jim Hegarty, Town Clerk. My topic for tonight is to talk about amendments at the upcoming town meeting. I'd ask if anyone plans to make an amendment, they can complete amendment form, which I'll place online tonight, or they can pick up a form in our office. It would be asking people to be considerate of their neighbors. If they know they're going to submit an amendment, please submit it to us ahead of time. We can have it typed up. We can have the PowerPoint presentation ready to go and make the meeting run smoothly and just to save all of our neighbors a bit of time. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And is there any other public comment? No. All right, so seeing none, do you want to call your meeting to order?
Yes, I call the Southborough School Committee meeting to order at 6:31 on Tuesday, March 31st, 2026, and we have 3 members present.
All right, so we're going to be conducting interviews for the new elementary school building committee, and we have 7 applicants for 5 positions. And under the charge, the select board appoints 3 members and the school committee appoints 2 members. In terms of the order of the interviews, we are kind of set to go just kind of in alphabetical order, but Kathy, I know you have an issue. Do you want to explain to people?
So one of the 7 candidates is Bob Moss. So when it comes time for Mr. Moss to do his interview, I will recuse myself.
All right. All right. So Mark, do you want to come forward? And I know that, a lot of us, we are, familiar with you already from your work in the 2 other prior committees. So, but please feel free to, share your perspective.
I'll make it quick. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. I do admit I have an agenda, and I've been very consistently applying this agenda throughout serving on the last 2 committees. One is safety. Our school must incorporate the best design and technology to ensure school and student safety. Health. The internal environment must promote physical and mental well-being for students and staff. Educational needs. Our facility must meet or exceed the standards set by our administration and school committee. Staffing. We must create an environment that helps attract and retain the best educators in an increasingly competitive field. Sustainability and cost effectiveness. The project must aim for net zero energy use and long-term environmental responsibility. We must meet the need to control maintenance costs and emphasize savings in non-educational costs with an efficient facility, leaving no stone unturned in analyzing needed project costs. Non-educational costs eat at our annual school budget, and keeping an eye on both design costs and operating costs is a critical balancing act. And lastly, community resource. The facility must incorporate areas for the larger community educational needs. We need to think of this as a 360-day-a-year resource, not closed for the summer. With over 50 years of real estate development and commercial and residential building experience behind me, renovations of existing facilities is an area that I was involved in during most of my past 50 years. I was involved with 5 historic rehabs in Springfield, Lowell, and a former school, Jonathan Maynard School on the Framingham Town Common, which now houses the Danforth Museum of Art. I was a project manager for the renovation of an old former school into the more modern Lincoln Medical Center next to the campus of the Metro West Hospital Complex. Renovating an older building is harder than building new. The numbers we originally developed in the spring of 2024 are full of assumptions, and our job is to eliminate many of those assumptions. The building plans were completed in 1968, so we need to refer to NERI as a 1968 building. This is important because the first edition of the Mass State Building Code was not published until 1975. So all codes are on the table, including the earthquake code, which no engineer to date will certify that we comply. We will need to fully understand what is below the building so that our foundations and flooring will continue to carry loads safely. We need to fully understand the structural loading that exists, as we need to alter the loading to create better spaces to teach our students. NERI is a very inefficient building with high areas of non-educational space. We need to call in our consultants to figure a way to reorient the space into something that meets or exceeds the 6 goals I started out with, including overall space efficiency. As a potential member, I pledge to continue to ask the hard questions and leave no stone unturned in finding a way to turn this building into something we can support. I look forward to being on the committee.
All right, thanks. So in terms of how we ask questions, I was thinking it makes sense that we kind of alternated by first starting with members of the school committee that ask questions, and then for the next candidate, we'd have the select board just kind of go back and forth. So Laura, do you want to?
Does anyone in the school committee have any specific questions?
I know Mark really well and his capabilities. I have no questions.
All right,
I would say the same.
select board? Yes, Al?
So I've got a couple of questions. Town meeting was given the opportunity to drop option 2. And town meeting was very clear that they wanted option 2 fully and carefully considered. You have been publicly opposed to option 2 and here and on the floor of town meetings, as is your perfect right. And the outline that you've done here with net zero and the large-scale reconfiguration of the building would preclude option 2. How can the public be assured that what town meeting expects, which is a full and appropriate vetting of option 2, that you're going to do that when you've been so publicly opposed?
Thank you. Yes, I was opposed to option 2, but not necessarily for the reasons you mentioned. Every single item listed in option 2, with the exception of 1, will be included in the numbers we derive for option 1. In fact, some of them we already have in some way or form with the work that was, the pricing that was done in 2024. You've got to understand that when you renovate a building, you have an issue called cascading compliance issues. And oftentimes when you fix something, you find out there's something else in the building that it affects its integrity. And let me mention one thing. The roof. If you recall, I asked 2 questions when you were talking about the roof several weeks ago. One question to the contractor was, how do we deal with contractors that are going to put equipment up on the roof and make penetrations? He answered it exactly the way I expected. He basically stated that he would consult with the team and determine what's there and write the specifications so that his warranty is intact. The second question I had was over roof drains. It was an odd question. He explained exactly what I wanted to hear, that he would clean them down into inside the building and do what's necessary because they're a critical component to the roof. The number one item that causes a roof to fail prior to even 15 years is water sitting up on that roof. Now, what he failed and what we've failed to look at is our consultants in 2024 determined that there are 2 roof drains and they drain into the parking closed drainage system. We know that drainage system is in failure. So you can't expect the roof to function completely if we have another 2 50-year storms as we had 2 years ago, with a massive amount of water driving down those roof drains and suddenly hitting a wall of water that's sitting in the drainage system. Either we have damaged pipes, sumps that have collapsed, or other things that cause that water not to drain properly. So my objection of walking down and listing 5 or 6 items and giving a budget to them is that those 5 or 6 items are going to trigger something else. So in my opinion, you'll get all the numbers you want for that option 2. But you're also going to get a long page of qualifying statements as to what else needs to be done to make sure we've got the safest and the best environment. Just quickly, if you fix the heating system, you're relying on fossil fuels. But putting aside that the state is mandating that we don't do that, but let's fix it. You're relying on a gas pipe that goes up the side of the building across the roof. We don't do that anymore. That's not safe. So we need to take that gas line off and get it underground. You're relying on a 60-year-old gas line that goes out to the entrance drive to Parkerville. We have no plans on record. No expert has found how that connection is and the age of that connection. And if you think about it, the gas line travels through an area of high groundwater. Water and gas don't mix well. I know from working with National Gas, pipes that old tend to break. We can't rely on the gas feed. So the mere fact that we want to fix the heating system means we have to bury the gas line and replace the gas line all the way back out to the street. And that was my concern with the numbers. I can have 18 conversations about each one, but just listing them and putting a budget next to them was my objection. You'll get them in the bid documents. You'll be able to pull out anything you want to pull out, but the numbers will be developed and there'll be a lot of qualifications to them.
I have no further questions for Mark right now.
Kathy?
As Roger, we were on the new rebuilding committee together, so I have no questions. I know Mr. Davis and his qualifications very well.
Thank you. I have no questions either.
I also don't have any questions and just trying to, because we got some new people here that we'll want to probably spend a little more time with. Okay, so Tim, you are the next person.
You want to go over that way? Happy to move.
Up to you, but, or you could just, tell us a little bit about why you want to serve on the committee.
Okay. So for those that don't know me, I was on the pre-K through 8 committee over the summer. I was extremely neutral in what we were doing and just trying to get the facts of the situation. So I'm looking to kind of just continue that work. And I have 2 kids that are going to be in the school, probably one of the first years that the school would be in whatever state it turns into. So a little bit of a vested interest in what we end up doing, and I will have kids in it. So I do care about it from a slightly different perspective. So.
All right, and I know you well, so I don't have any questions. Anyone else from the select board have any questions? School committee?
Well, no questions for me. I know Tim.
No questions.
All right, and so next up is Jason Malinowski. Want to bring him over as a panelist?
Good evening.
Well, I know that, a lot of us are also familiar with you as well, but if you could just kind of, explain a little bit briefly of why, why you'd like to serve on the new elementary school building committee.
Sure. I appreciate the opportunity and sorry I'm not able to be with you tonight. I'm traveling. I didn't know if I was going to apply again or not. I think you all know my level of involvement with the past projects and even the school research subcommittee that led up to this. But I was asked by many members of the community to at least consider it, and that's what I'm here to do. I respect any decision that either appointing authority make here tonight. But my main reason for getting back involved was to provide some continuity to the process. I purposely sat out during the summer process with the K-8 building committee that met over the summer and brought forward some options that I think ultimately led us to some of the votes that were taken a month or so ago. But I think in a project of this magnitude, in this size, continuity is key, but also someone that's willing to have an open mind. I obviously stood up and advocated for the one and only option that we were allowed to advocate for at town meeting because of the MSBA process. But I would also acknowledge that this is not an MSBA process anymore. And I've been one that was on record being very lukewarm to going into that process to start back in 2021. So I'm here to serve. If you'd like me to serve, I'm happy to go into any of my qualifications that I believe make me a good candidate. And I can obviously stand here and say that I've successfully taken, a study and a feasibility to a culmination and know how to manage a budget as well if we're successful in getting any process forward. And I also just wanted to acknowledge that obviously this is a very different project we're looking at here. And I'm fully committed to all of the options that were outlined to the T that was voted in the article a month ago.
All right. Laura, you want to start with the school committee?
I'm very familiar with Jason and his qualifications, and I have no questions.
Same.
As just sort of a qualifying question, not for Jason specifically, but he brought it up. The purview of the building committee ends at the selection of the plan moving forward, or does it continue as we get into actually building and helping to usher the process through?
All right, I'll take a stab at that. Now, I think the charge leaves this open, but it has historically been the case, right? That the committee that brings forward the project, and then if the project is successful, would stay on, help to manage change orders, et cetera. So I don't know, for example, like the public safety building committee, right? There would be an.
So that was two committees. So.
Okay, it was two separate committees?
Yes.
All right.
No, there was a lot of
Stand
crossover in the
corrected.
committees.
There's a lot of overlap between the
But it was
study
still two
committee and the
committees.
building
Okay.
committee, so.
So there would need to be a building committee, but it wouldn't necessarily be this committee.
Okay,
Yeah, the focus of expertise changes
okay.
over time. You want people who are familiar with nuts and bolts construction once you start building something.
I agree with that. You would usually have some continuity, but also some new faces, depending on the expertise you have on the study committee that you appoint.
All right. Select board? Al?
No
Jim?
questions.
I have one question. Jason, I know your qualifications extremely well from a couple things that we did, community center being one of them. One of your styles to this would be kind of waiting for a number and then coming forward. Knowing that one of the options has a number to start with, what's your thought process for maybe changing that approach, or how would you think about that differently now, since it's kind of different than it has been on your and my previous work?
Let me just make sure I understand the question correctly, Tim. You're saying that $15 million option that, that not to exceed 15 million, not waiting for a designer to give us the numbers on all the other items. Is that kind of the question?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is better said. The general approach for the committee, the NBC, and for the community center work when we did that was to kind of wait and have the consultant come back with an initial pass. And then go from there and kind of see what they said and do that. Would you drive anything differently knowing that there's a number sitting in front of you that's a target versus having, waiting for an initial response?
Well, if appointed, I'd be one of 5 voices, at least based on the current charge. My recommendation, based on what I've seen work and not work, would be as follows, based on the charge that we're working with, is I would think early in the process, the designer that's selected as part of the designer selection process would have to tell us what 15 million would get us or not get us, right? And what the ins and the outs would be. So I do think you're going to have to give them some flexibility to do their work. But I think, as regardless of which direction you go, the designer as well is going to go through a number of processes to get that number down. So what they can fit within 15 million on the first pass versus the 7th pass undoubtedly will be different. Why it's different, I think the process should ferret that out. But I believe that any committee that's appointed, regardless of whether I'm a member of it or not, should understand all the options for that building in the existing footprint, and through open forums and collaborative discussions with select board, advisory, and school committee, bring forward any feasible options to town meeting for a vote. And so I would expect that there should be multiple articles brought forward for consideration. And one of those would be, what can you do for that 15 million, if that's a number that people are stuck on? Because I think that's what town meeting voted for, and we have to abide by that.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, do you have any?
No, I know Jason too well. We've served on numerous committees together, so nope.
I have no questions.
I also don't have any questions, just because I know Jason well as well. All right. So then Heather, I think you are the next. So, just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the members of the committee and explain your background and interest in serving on the committee.
Yes, yeah, it appears that perhaps I'm the new blood so far. My name is Heather Landis McLeod. So background is I have 15 years of experience so far as an educator, as a classroom teacher, an instructional coach, curriculum developer, department chair, and an administrator. And in those various roles, I've also had opportunities and spend a lot of my time in all sorts of different schools. So I see different types of schools: old, new, need of help, don't need help, functional, non-functional. My experience spans K through 12. And I'm also not only a resident here, but I have 2 young children. So I have a vested interest in the school system as a whole, but particularly in sort of the deep thinking of this process here. My children may or may not directly benefit time-wise from exactly what is done, but they are highly relevant, and their peers and the children coming behind them are obviously highly relevant to this. And the reality is, it's not just about the students in the moment, it's about the students of the future and those who aren't here yet and those who have come through. I'm a lifelong resident of Southborough. I was raised in this school system. I think that we need to make sure that we have not just strong academics, but financially feasible and modern academic spaces. And I do think that I bring some perspective that, though I have experience with project management, large budget management into the millions, marketing, all of that stuff there, the educational side of things is really my specialty. And so I think that's my greatest advantage coming into this.
Okay. Anyone from the select board like to start with any questions?
Why did you go into education?
I went into education, to be completely honest, I kind of always found myself heading towards education. I started as a coach, athletic coach, and I adore that. And coaching and teaching are very much the same thing. And so when I was in college, it was never really a question of would I be an educator? It was just what type of educator was I going to be? Was I going to be in museums with education curatorial design or in a classroom? And as my career has progressed, I've shifted much less from, I love to talk about history and social sciences, and I want to educate about that, to how do we actually prepare our students for the future and how do we prepare our spaces for the future? So that's been, majority of my last 10 years has been creating really life relevant spaces in classrooms so that students are not just getting the base level skills, but they are truly ready to stand on their own 2 feet and thrive as individuals for the many decades beyond when they're in the school classroom with us.
Can I ask one more
Sure,
question?
sure.
I read that you were at Boston Collegiate.
Yes.
How is the mission of Boston Collegiate as a charter school different from what, say, Neary is doing?
I mean, Boston Collegiate, so we are a 5 through 12 school, and our mission is ultimately to prepare all students for college and life beyond. We serve students who don't have a lot of options usually, and their background has not had a lot of options. And so we're doing the same thing that Neary, Trotter, any school here is doing, which is meeting the students where they are as who they are, and recognizing that regardless of background, regardless of anything, that you have the right to a strong universal education that's going to set you up for life. And I think that's what we're trying to do here in this school system. We're a great school system. We're trying to set students up for their next steps and their big picture. And that's exactly what Boston Collegiate does.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tim?
Do you have a lot of firsthand experience in a school of the age of Neary? Like, do you know intuitively kind of like things that work and don't work from a firsthand perspective?
Yeah, so though the sort of like recent years, my work has been primarily 5 through 12. Like I said, I do have experience K through 12. I am, in terms of education and as an instructional coach, I am qualified and certified K through 12. And I work a lot with with teachers in the 3 through 6 age range or grade age range.
So you've seen like inside the building. So like specifically, my question is more around the size of like there's deficiencies in the building of that nature. Have you seen those firsthand that you kind of know where they are and kind of like identify them more easily? I guess you would know like how you could work around it or have worked around some of those problems in the past.
Yeah, so like literally Neary right now. Yeah, so I've been in it a few times.
Yeah.
Multiple times a year over the last few years with things. It's shockingly similar to when I attended. You don't have to ask directions if I need to find anywhere
Okay.
when I'm in the building. But yes, actually,
Okay.
you can ask my husband when I go in. I'm usually sort of like, oh, this thing, like, oh, this classroom, oh, like the students with this kind of thing. He usually just laughs at me.
Okay, so insider knowledge of like just kind of the structure and how you would reimagine it is something you already intuitively have.
Most definitely, yeah.
Okay.
And I've been in a lot of different physical school buildings that serve the same age range. Like I said, old, new, ancient, all of that. And so I've been able to see how it's done in a few different places.
Okay, thank you.
I got to, by the way, thank you for being a new face. We don't see enough of them. And
No, you were good.
you talked about this, financial feasibility and, every dollar that we spend on debt service is a dollar we can't spend on teachers and firefighters and police officers. Could you just talk a little bit about how you sort of square that circle? It's a terrible analogy.
Essentially how to work with the fact that we don't have unending money and we have to make decisions at some point about
Yeah,
where it
but
goes.
I'd like to get a sense of priorities. I have my own, but I'd like to hear yours.
I mean, ultimately, I'd say the priority is everything has to function in some manner, right? There are things that are essentials, and then there are things that, right, there's needs and wants. If we're talking economics, right? There's needs and there's wants. Needs have to happen. Wants are great and they would be lovely. And sometimes there's dreams that go with it. So if we look at, say, like, right, emergency services and school services, they're both essential services. And so what are the needs? What are the needs? Understanding what those costs are, what has to happen. And then once we've got hopefully those set with some sort of bucket remaining afterwards, then we look at what are the wants. If obviously this committee is looking at feasibility around education, so a lens is prioritizing a long-term, high-quality education for the students of Southborough. So it's then like, okay, well, our purview is prioritizing students, but not ignoring the other essentials in the town. Their wants are these wants that are kind of like shiny wants, but maybe not really impactful wants. Or are they things that really truly make a classroom more functional? So it's not essential, but it has a true functionality. Does it have a long-term functionality? Is it a smart board, which everyone has, they loved 15 years ago, but generally were not super functional in the classroom, and they've generally gone the way of the dodo now? Or is it something that is like, okay, no, this truly is going to be something that we get our money's worth out of. It's going to be 10, 15 years, and it's going to advance that education versus, is it a shiny wants or a trendy wants? And maybe that money will be better served going to a different bucket.
Yeah, so the question is, I think you've answered it well. The question is, we'll have a long list of wants,
Yeah.
but those wants need to be balanced against the need to actually pay for teachers,
Yeah.
pay for programs. Thank you.
Kathy?
So thank you, Heather, for applying for this. The time you took with the application was great. It was really nice reading your CV as far as all the stuff that you've done since you're out of college. We were hoping that someone like you would step up so that you would add the perspective of a teacher or educator to this process. So I don't have any specific questions. I'm just really glad that you stepped up, and it's nice to have a fresh face.
Thank you.
And I also thank you for being a new face to apply. I guess, do you have any kind of comment about like the observation about like the process which brought us here, because it's been kind of a tortured road of how we got here, right? Of how we had the first project which failed, and we had this study committee over the summer. I mean, do you have any thoughts on like, what is the thing that you think will help us just like finally get this, over the finish line in the next 9, 12, 18 months? Like in terms of also like, all of the efforts to try to engage people and get people, participating in meetings and showing up to meetings and voting, and ultimately getting like people to come out and support the final product. Do you have any thoughts on like what's the best, after the experience we've been through so far, what's the best way to do that?
I can't necessarily say that I think I have an idea of the best way to do it. Certainly managing information, minimizing misinformation is really important. I don't know exactly the process and what went down in the last 18 months to necessarily say like, oh, we want to shift this or not do that, or we need to do this more. I know what I was witnessing from the citizen side of things, which was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of paying attention. I'm kind of paying attention. And then all of a sudden it came down to crunch time. And it was like idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, and people on obviously social media blows up, things like that. I imagine that perhaps it is more around earlier, clearer information in terms of, like you said, getting people to actually come and listen and pay attention. I was at some of the early sort of informational sessions, and I mean, in some cases, like me and 4 other people in the Trotter Auditorium, and and one of the people was literally a kindergartner there who was taking better notes than any of us at the time. How to mobilize is tough because, I mean, look at trying to get people out to town or annual town meeting, right? People want to go, people want to pay attention, people want to say they're going to be there, but there's oftentimes some excuse or a reason for why someone doesn't attend. So they might be committed to this process. They might say, I want to know, I want to be a part of, but what incentivizes them to shift dinner, to shift the soccer date or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's going to have to be a lot of thinking outside of the box brainstorming.
Right. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I'm ready.
Oh, yeah.
You're
I
up.
forgot. Sorry.
We have, yeah.
I was trying to keep track of who was going first. second,
Did you
third,
want to
sorry.
end with Alan, or did you want to add that?
I know Roger is angry. You're upset because that's the second time I've done that to
No,
you.
I want to acknowledge that you used the word torture when you talked about the process that we came through to date.
I say he really.
So I'm Roger Challen. Nice to meet you, Heather. We don't have our name tags here. I'm one of the people that feels very strongly that we need at least one person with an educator's background, okay, on the committee. And you clearly have, a lot, extensive background in that area. If I'm asking you to repeat something, then I apologize, but when I look at the charge that, this group has as far as putting this committee together, there's probably anywhere from 12 to 15 skills or experience segments that that would be helpful, to have on the committee. And there's gonna be 5 people, okay, on the committee. What area do you think you would be most helpful in contributing to a committee like this? I'm just sort of curious about kind of where you think you could help the most.
I think the reality of what education is these days and what the reality of being in a school building as a student, as a teacher, and as an administrator is. Yes, we all went to school at some point, but if you've been out of a school for even just a handful of years, as hard as you might try to actually stay in touch, you're going to be out of touch. You have to be a boots on the ground person to actually really truly get the nuance. Like with any job, right? You might have experience in something, but if you aren't in it in the moment, you've been left behind to an extent, regardless of how much you've read up on it, or you go to however many pancake breakfasts or things like that. So I think my modern, true, live understanding of the entire education system is probably my greatest asset. And then I have been part of, I have run 5- and 6-year long program redevelopments and renovations and audit studies and some really, really intense things that have to blend multiple goals and blending the old with the new and multiple stakeholders in from that educational lens.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, thank you again. It's nice to see you. We actually went to Near at the same time, 1 year apart, but yes, I agree. It does look basically exactly the same. So for better, for worse. So again, great to see you here and thank you so much for stepping up. I'm just curious, in looking at the charge for this particular committee, what is it about this that is really exciting for you? And I guess I'd like to know a little bit more just about your reasons to want to serve.
It's going to sound kind of cheesy, but honestly, I just felt kind of drawn to it. Modern education, like I think I've made clear, modern education is my thing. I feel really, really passionately about it. And that's not just, am I up on the latest curriculum? That is how do we really make everything about the educational experience, inside and out, tangible and intangible, visible and invisible, the best that it possibly can be for a long period of time, and not as a band-aid, but as like a true future thinking experience. And this was kind of one of those things where I think it was a Facebook post. I was like, hey, consider applying. And I just felt drawn to it. It lies in similarity to a lot of the things I've done in my career in terms of like deep contemplative thinking and audit thinking around what is the best step forward. I just spent the last year on the strategic plan committee for my school, working through the next 5-year strategic plan to make sure that we can move into the future and accomplish our goals. And so I don't have some big like I've been part of this in Southport. I really do just
Yeah.
feel like this is something that is really important
Mhm.
and I'm passionate about the concept.
Yeah, that's incredible. I guess I'm just really curious. You've mentioned just like modern schools a couple of times, and that wording in particular is exciting to me in terms of like long-term goals for the school. You said that you've seen a lot of schools like old and new, and just like different iterations of different schools in your work experience. Is there anything in terms of modernizations that you've seen either in a school or a couple of schools that you've noted that have really you felt like just been particularly, I guess, ads that really made a big difference in terms of like educational experience for students? Just anything that comes to mind, or just kind of.
Yeah, I guess for like the sort of most center part of the educational experience, I think about the classrooms with that. And when it comes to the classroom spaces, thinking about what is one for like inclusion spaces, how do we make sure that all students are able to have an equal opportunity at all of the education that is there? So how do we make sure the students who are in special education pull out, inclusion, support, do they all have parts of the room that support their mental health and their academic health? Are the spaces large enough that if it's too big a classroom, it's overwhelming to most students. If it's too small a classroom, it's overwhelming to most students because you're like a sardine. You can't get away from everyone, especially for this age group. Their brains are only partially formed. Their emotions are all over the place. And some of them are, at that age, hitting puberty on the younger end of things. They have a lot that's going on. And so they need to have a really, really safe physical space. There needs to be a space for para educators and push-in educators to be able to work with those students in a way that isn't embarrassing. So we need to be able to have desks, chairs, literal physical arrangements that allow for a variety of educational opportunities to happen. I think in the younger schools, a lot of times I see that there's a lot of push for what I would call sort of like the shiny wants in schools. They oftentimes sound great to parents because they sound really cool, but they don't necessarily do a lot in the schools themselves, especially for the younger students, which is, they need play and activity spaces. Do they need to have 3 oversized relaxation stations, which is what it's been called in a few schools? No, they tend to just end up being wasted space and they cost a lot of money and they don't serve a lot of purpose. Outdoor classrooms are really cool. They're trendy. In my experience, they're almost never used. So how can we maximize the outdoor space in a way that either a classroom that people want to use, especially in New England, when we don't want to be in the rain, we don't want to be in the snow, we don't want to get sunburned, right?
Both days.
Right. I think the most successful schools that I have physically been into have been the ones that have prioritized, or I guess taken off the rose-colored glasses. They've prioritized the classrooms and the functionality of the classrooms. They've prioritized the location of the special education services so that they're not the basement students and they are not truly separate and feeling separate because of that. And they've looked at the reality of what actually gets used versus what just sounds cool.
Thank you so much. All our questions.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
The new people get a lot more questions.
Yeah. All right. Bob is up.
Bob Moss, I live up on 53 Sears Road. Lived in the area since '79, Upton, Hopkinton, and Westboro, Southboro, over 40 years or so. And my background is I have an electrical engineering degree from Villanova, an MBA from Babson College. And when I graduated in '77, I took a job at General Electric Company selling electric power equipment. And believe it or not, my first customers and only customers, I was with them for 4 years before I left, was Mass Electric, New England Power, Granite State Electric, Narragansett Electric. So that's how I got in the area. In '85, I left GE and started being a real estate developer. Cold turkey. My wife had a good job, so it worked out well. And her and I both met at Villanova. And we started down in Upton. But I became a real estate developer. I got a builder's license and went down to a bank and borrowed some money and started building houses in Upton in the 85, 86, 87, and then kind of grew from there. Cumulatively, I retired in 2019, but cumulatively, I built probably between 20 and 25 subdivisions, a lot of it in Shrewsbury and Northborough, not much in Southborough, very little subdivisions, a little over 600 houses. I'm a sole proprietor. I never had an employee in my life except for my wife does all the financing and the bill paying together. So I've never had employees. I have a unlimited builder's license, so I can build apartment complexes and everything. So I'm always doing my own permitting. So I built the houses, subdivisions. I built a golf course, retirement community, condo projects. And I culminated with 3 apartment complexes, including Madison Place in Southborough. And in the course of 6 years, I built a little over 500 apartments. And 2 of them, including Madison Place, I was the total GC. I didn't hire an outside GC. So I got every building permit, met through every inspection, worked with the architect, got the occupancy permits, designed the buildings, and then hired every sub, paid every bill. And cumulatively, the apartments were maybe $110 million, but in my career was closer to $400 million in construction that I was the sole employee of and paying all the bills, a lot of checks, a lot of loans. And so I have unbelievable experience. And my dad was a project manager building a couple of huge IBM buildings. He was an MIT grad, mechanical engineering. So when I grew up, everything was about big projects. And he was always flying off to Chicago to build the IBM building in Chicago and things like that. So I kind of got that in. And I do have a couple of grandchildren heading into kindergarten. But today I actually had a fond memory of my growing up upstate New York, a little bit opposite near West Point. I was blessed that my school, because we're stationary housing wise, I grew up in a nice neighborhood with a bunch of kids, all the parents were fathers fought in a war, and managed to stay in a school district for kindergarten through high school. And pretty much all my friends did too, which was a really nice experience. But I remember kindergarten through 3rd, this was at the Ben Franklin Elementary School. And just like you start down at that end of the building and there's 3 or 4 classrooms, and then you move up the hall and and you just move your way till you go out the other end of the building. So I have a lot of fond memories of classrooms and growing up, in elementary school and then through middle school and high school. When I grew up, we were building a lot of new schools then. I went into a brand new middle school. And so I'm kind of familiar with that. And I remember the tiles weren't all done on the floor when we all went in because the contractor was behind. But Kathy Cook suggested I might be interested in applying here. My interest is, I have a lot of time now and a ton of experience. I think I'm an expert at finance, cost and value evaluations, because my whole life was, I have to do a nice product to sell them or rent them, like Madison Place. And you got to come up with the right cost in order to get the right sales price. So I've been out to maximize my income for 40 years, where in this case is kind of maximizing the use of the town's funds, which is, it's a nice change to me mentally. And I'm on a committee with the wastewater committee with Al and Sam. So I've gotten a good education on the real challenges of the financing in the town of Southborough, the tax base, the bad mix of commercial, residential, and it's very challenging for the town, where there are some other towns that would just build a new Neary school and it would pass, unanimously at the town meeting. And I realized that this is a different scenario here. And there's a, job of the committee would be to help convince the town residents that this is worth doing, whatever we choose to. And, whether it's a step-by-step, 15 years or chunks is to be established. I also thought today that I would love to meet like some of the teachers at the Neary School and ask what they want. What do you see? I'd love to meet the janitor or janitors. I'd love to meet the maintenance guy and really find out what really goes on at the school. What's all the problems? What backs up? What the scenario is. Because to be honest, I don't know that. I walked around the school a couple of times in anticipation of this, but I really like to get into school at some point and maybe as the kids leave, somebody can give me a tour. But I think I need some knowledge on that. I really don't have that. But a little short story quickly. I also have a house down in Chatham, and the senior center was being revamped last year. And they went out for bid, and it was a $5 million bid to get a bunch of stuff done in the senior center. It was an older building. And the bids came in, and it was a little over around $5 million. But then somewhere along the line, they realized they wanted to do a lot more, and they came up with what we mentioned, heard about the wish list. And one of the big things was like taking lolly columns out of it. They have a 10-foot high basement rooms, and there's a lot of lolly columns down there. And they wanted to get them out with steel beams and stuff. So they went out for an amended bid, and the same company came in, and it was $2 million more. And I saw the list of the stuff, and so I went down there and I met with the head of the senior center. I said, show me what this stuff is. I go down there and I'm looking at these lolly columns that they want to take out. And what they want to do is, it was all wood construction. So they want to shove up steel beams so that they don't have two lolly columns in the middle of the meeting here. And so I brought a good builder friend, a very experienced guy down there. We talked to little people, and they ended up, not just us, but I think there were other sentiment in the town. They went out for rebid it. They took a little bit off their list, but all the lolly columns were in there and everything. And just last week, they had a new final bid of $5,200,000 for the whole thing. And they got all the majority of their wish list. So I think, getting good value and recognizing when you're getting ripped off. I think I'm excellent at that. When I think something's too high, I just know it. Like I know and I realize you have prevailing wages, which I never dealt with, but I could live with those. But I have a very good sense when somebody comes in and says, I'll do this for $100,000 and it's really only worth 65. I'm really good at that, and because that's all I've done my whole life. So I think I'd be very good. My prior applicant here, I think would be, if I wasn't in the committee, she would be great, because I think the school aspect of it is an integral part of this whole thing. It's what's good for the school and the students. And it's not just a bunch of construction guys figuring out what's the best for them. So I thought she would be excellent. I would personally, like I said, like to meet all the staff over there to find out really what's going on and what their needs are. But I'm really good at the first gentleman up, things like drains on roofs, pictures of roofs, whatever the furnace is, there's nothing, gas lines. Like I have unbelievable expertise at every single aspect of construction. And I think I could be a good help to the committee as to, what's worth doing, when you leave stuff alone, what you get, when you get bang for the buck. And I think that would be helpful. So that's about it. That's my spiel, and open for questions.
All right, I think I'm gonna be in over there. Is that right?
Well, I'm not able to audit your credentials. They seem excellent. And it resonated with me that you wanted to talk to the teachers. That's one of the things that I did early on, and that's an important thing to do. And I'm glad that you feel it's an important thing that you would want to do. So I don't really have any other questions.
I don't either. I don't have any questions.
No.
We're going to count you as another new face, even though you have served on another the committee. So thank you for coming forward. Just for the record, I work with Bob on the wastewater study committee, and I can attest to the fact that he is a wealth of construction and project knowledge, and is willing to get his hands dirty.
Tim?
Bob, you're somebody that I don't quite know, so happy to ask you a couple questions. I'm glad
Sure.
you're sitting here. Do you have any firsthand knowledge of converting a building to current standards? So taking an older structure, making it ADA compliant and really retrofitting this building, or are you more of a new construction?
Well, I'm all new construction,
Okay,
except I just did renovate a 1790 house in Chatham.
okay,
But that's not applicable probably. The, all the apartments, everything has to be ADA compliant, you know, so I'm used to ADA rules, regulate, you know, the latest in sprinklers, fire detection, exit doors, all that is integral part when you build these apartment complexes. So I'm very familiar with all that. So I'm assuming everything that I had to deal with is applicable, even if it's not in that school. But when you do a major renovation, normally you have to bring everything up to date.
yeah. And then you said you retired. Have you worked with the 10th edition of the building code at all, or was that before you?
I take, every year I take the renewal courses and up, you know, I have the current, you have to take 12 hours of classroom every 2 years to keep your license. So I've kept my license alive and keep up to date with, you know, when they give you the new books and 12 hours of classroom.
Okay, so those were my two. Thank you.
Sorry about the noise.
I'm-
You don't have to answer this, but what are your thoughts on using MSBA money and not using MSBA money? And you really don't have to answer this, but
MSBA?
is the Mass School Building, what they will let you have, for instance, in the last iteration of the school that failed at town meeting, I think it was $110 million school, and the state was going to pay, what was it, 30 something? What was it? 30 something? But in order to get that 30 something, the state stipulated it had to be certain ways. So
Okay.
you don't have to answer this.
No,
question,
no,
they
but
put
my understanding of that
they
was
put constraints on
that
it.
the state doesn't support really renovations. You know, that they don't, at least the way I read it and maybe the local papers, that if you're doing renovations, they're not handing out the money like they do on a new building. Does that sound right?
I mean, not to speak out of line here, but
Go ahead.
it's that they do support renovations. It's just, there's a process you have to follow, and each thing within the process has to meet certain criteria throughout the steps. And then it's we had 12 options to look at that got narrowed down to 3, which got narrowed down to 1. So throughout that process, it was just long, but the piece specifically about renovations, there is reimbursement for renovations, and you can get good money back. It's typically around 33 to 37% of an effective reimbursement rate through the process, but it's a different process and it's lengthier than funding it yourself.
But it didn't seem, in just casually reading all the little articles in town, that was really with the Neary School, was it really feasible or not feasible, or?
It was feasible, but it wasn't the approach that was pursued. So the
Okay,
proposal that was
that's-
pursued seemed to be fiscally responsible at the time that a renovation or a new build was going to be more fiscally responsible for long-term savings and other things.
Okay.
So I think the blog pieces you're reading, like it's accurate to people's opinions that you're reading on there. So your perspective of one versus the other might skew what you're reading.
Well, unless there was something really detrimental to doing, I don't know why you wouldn't try to do it. You know, it seemed it would be very obvious.
All right, well, Bob, I liked everything you said, and particularly the part about your experience in, value engineering, and I think that could be really valuable on the committee. Big part of this is working with, architects, right? And that's something you got a lot of experience in. All this whole public angle to it would be a little bit new, right? But you also have experience with like permitting processes, right? The right way to approach, where a project, so it's a little bit similar, like a lot of the projects you worked on would need to get some support from the public, like for, permits or 40B permits, things like that. So I think you got experience in how to get support for the, projects. So I think that could be a really valuable addition to the committee.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Bob?
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for inviting
right.
me.
All right. All right, Andrew, you want to?
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Good. Well, again, you're familiar to all of us, but, if you want to just explain a little bit why you're interested in serving on the committee and, definitely like your perspective on the whole process we've gone through. What do you think is the next key thing to try to get it over the finish line?
Yeah, I mean, I think like Jason, maybe I was a little hesitant to throw my hat in the ring. Some people reached out and kind of asked me to, and look it up, the makeup of the people that have applied. I think I bring a different lens, especially on the municipal finance side and and the value engineering, which was a lot of what I did on the NERI committee. I mean, I think, I really spearheaded a lot of the conversations we had of bringing those costs down and trying to find every square foot of efficiency in those buildings. So a little different lens there. I think that there's, also bringing in the outside perspective of everything else that goes on in this town. What else is in the horizon in terms of other capital projects? How are we looking from a affordability standpoint, from a levy capacity standpoint, from a debt exclusion, for what this could do to our bond rating? I think I'm well poised to answer those questions and kind of steer the direction there. So I just wanted to make sure that lens was on the committee, and I figured I was well suited for that, so I might as well throw my hat in the ring.
All right. I don't have any questions, select board. Do you have any questions for Mr. Pfaff?
I do not.
Al?
Well, you're a glutton for punishment. Talk to me about the two options and sort of what your thoughts are on the two options.
I am definitely open to two options. I think that both options have significant merits, and I think both options need to be fully analyzed. I do think there's something to say that we should do something short-term, keep the building along, and then think of something in the 10 to 15-year horizon in terms of long-term planning, and especially what do we do with Finn, which is coming up as well, also with other projects on the horizon. But at the same time, I think it's also prudent to not throw the baby out with the bathwater, and to make sure you look and see, is there more bang for our buck, which is really what drives me most of the time. Is if I spend a little bit more money, can I get more longevity, better educational facilities, and weighing those pros and cons. So I am all in favor of options and analysis and being able to understand the pros and cons and where our tax dollars most efficiently deployed. But yeah, that's my take.
Okay, thank you.
I have nothing. I worked with Andrew a lot, know his experience and his capabilities.
I also have no questions.
I guess just my only question, I'm just curious, I was wondering if you had any just thoughts or ideas on just the best way to communicate complex financial information to the community? Because I feel like, in some instances, a lot of this information for some people can feel really overwhelming to kind of understand and comprehend. So just wondering if there's anything that
Yeah, I mean, as part of the last committee, I handled a lot of that, which is very challenging. I mean, we did a lot of work on calculators and spreadsheets and trying to help people understand the tax impact, and the 3011 forms, which is the financial projections of the MSBA, and how do our calculations work, and especially like we were talking earlier about, you were talking to the other candidate about renovations. MSBA favors renovations over new construction. They give it additional up to 5% of reimbursement for that. So definitely something to make sure we keep into consideration. It's very difficult. The town financials and understanding how everything works is hard. But what we did on the other committee, and I'm committed to doing again, is holding a lot of information sessions, we had a lot of, unfortunately, not very well attended.
Mm.
But Kathy and I especially, and Mark Davis, who was also on the finance subcommittee, had a lot of Zoom calls, in-person meetings to try to explain every detail. I extensively, when people had questions on Facebook, I would say, give me a call, and I'd sit down and I'd spend, some people I spent over an hour just explaining how all the numbers worked. So, I'm definitely willing to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty with the financials. But, I think the community and the people in the town need to also come to the table and try to learn, try to understand it, not have knee-jerk reactions to Facebook posts or other things. Come directly to the sources, really try to understand it. So I think that was one of the downfalls, is misinformation, not the correct information, not going to the right sources, and not really having a good dialogue there. So no matter what project we go forward with, I think the communication side of this needs to be improved, but definitely committed to that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. I don't have any other questions. All right, thanks. All right, so Mr. Williams?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Craig Williams. I've been a Southborough resident since my family moved here in the summer of 2021. In terms of, start off with what interests me in being part of this, first and foremost, I have two children, and they're school age, and we moved to Southborough for the schools. And my daughter is currently active in the schools, and I, through that experience, have developed an incredible amount of trust in the admin, the staff there, and want to support them in supporting my children, as well as the children, all the children in the community and in the future. Also, I believe in public schools. I believe them as the golden ticket for opportunity and for children to become the best version of themselves, and to make our community as strong as possible. And finally, I do have some career experience. I feel like I could just take a lot of Heather's answers because I also am a career educator. I am currently a middle school principal. And over the past few years, I've spent leading the consolidation of three middle schools in the town of Franklin, ranging from the size of 350 to 450 students, and consolidating them into one. I was the principal and led that charge, currently in our first year of existence, and have had to balance the logistics, the high community expectations and long-term planning that goes along with that. And I think that there's so many parallels to this work. I'm interested in contributing because I understand how it is important it is, not just to develop a strong plan, but to build something the community can support and believe in. That's what I have to do as an educator, and that's what I feel like this committee is charged to doing. I'm not coming in as an architect or an engineer or necessarily as strong of an understanding of municipal finance. I might have to go and do a couple of the hour-long sessions with Andrew. But I see myself helping ensure the work is grounded in how schools function on a day-to-day, what it looks like at 10:30 on a Tuesday, and kids are transitioning from class to class and what that means. So with that, I feel like this is something that has truly called me as an interest to make a difference in this community.
All right, great. I don't remember who goes first this time, I guess.
The school committee.
Is it us?
Yeah,
Okay.
you guys, yeah.
Well, I think that, Alan, do you have something? Because I know you've got a time issue.
Yeah. I mean, one question, Greg, I mean, as you mentioned, Heather and you yourself have, similar background and, just from sort of this short description, do you think that there is a benefit of having both of you guys on the committee to provide sort of that perspective and that there's a build on of that skill set? Or do you think that is good, it is important to have that representation, but that it is, one person should provide it.
Yeah. Based off the answers that Heather gave, I feel like she would be a terrific candidate to be on this committee. I also feel like I would offer some unique insight in terms of when we're building looking to renovate or build a school. It's important to keep education at its center. And so I think in terms of my skill set and my experiences, particularly in these last few years, in which really leading this significant community project, I offer a unique insight to the committee.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you were discussing, the complex school consolidation that you had been working on. I'm curious, as a principal of the school, to what degree, if at all, did you integrate like teacher input and like other stakeholder input? I'm kind of curious about that because obviously a project with scale is going to involve just a lot of opinions, a lot of just like stakeholders involved. So just would love to hear.
Yeah, when you talk about schools, there's clearly no shortage of opinion. And so that was a significant charge that my superintendent gave me at the time. We did that in a variety of different ways. One way was we had a steering committee of staff members. The task of that steering committee was to look at different subgroups, thinking about how we can prepare the student body for this transition, how we can transition the staff for the transition, what we can do to engage our families, to bring them along in this process, and have a group focus on that and really engaging not only our families, but also community representations, local colleges, local businesses, and as well as just thinking of it from a systems and routines standpoint. What are the things that we need to get ready for the logistics? I give the example of the campus that I'm on went from having 400 students arrive and dismiss to then it was 1,000. And so starting to think about that process, that was constant meetings with local police in order to help do that. So that was, you had to just engage so many stakeholders. In terms of families, that was a really, there's a variety of different formats for that. Several presentations at school committee meetings, obviously, but we also had a variety of different listening sessions that would occur. And again, I think we heard one of those aspects of it that was so important in that work, which was discussed already, was fighting the misinformation or inaccurate information about what the process was going to unfold, how it was going to unfold, where students' classrooms were going to be too. And so I think that was a significant task, was engaging the variety of different stakeholders and then continuing to do it throughout this school year has been a significant aspect of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and living and learning of, okay, from a physical layout, what are some things that need to change and be tweaked?
Hey, Craig, thanks for volunteering. What were the one or two significant obstacles that you kind of saw as you kind of moved through that journey of consolidation? Obviously the population growth from smaller locations to larger, but anything that strikes you as something we might be interested in hearing about?
Yeah, I think one of the things, there's like the physical aspect of it, and one was the fact that we had to retrofit a school that was half an elementary school and half a middle school to be one middle school. And so when you talk about that, that is the hallways that are built for a kindergartner is a lot different than one that's built for a 14-year-old. And so trying to find ways in which like traffic patterns in the hallways and transition times to ensure safety for students. We have to have some very long routes back to go upstairs because the one stairwell was a kindergarten stairwell and we can't use that. So I think that is constantly something that we're up against in terms of how do we take the current space that we're utilizing and maximizing it for the efficiency and safety of the building so that students can learn. I think then the other challenge is the human emotion aspect of it. You know, when you tell people that they are going to be leaving the school that they've grown accustomed to and love, they often can see that school then from rose-colored glasses, and then you have to find a way to make your school more attractive when maybe it's not necessarily. So I think that there is just all those, the emotions and the connections that people have to their school are very real. I know my family feels that way towards the schools in Southborough, and that was clearly the case there. So that was a challenge and continues to be a challenge as we navigate our first year as a school community.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to move that the school committee adjourn.
Second. Roll call. Alan?
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor?
All right.
Yes.
That's because Alan, you got to go to. Okay.
So even though we won't have a quorum, I checked with the town clerk. I don't know that anyone is going to have any further questions, but he said we could ask questions even without even without a quorum here. Just check that out. Thanks.
Okay. I mean, you already talked a little bit about kind of the question I was thinking about is, so, I mean, it's interesting to see on your resume, like you've been in the Franklin school systems for like a long time.
Yes.
You know? So like a unique part of this committee is dealing with like, because one of the objectives is to get a project that will get, a 2/3 successful vote at a town meeting. And I think because Franklin is one of the few is a town council.
Yes.
So it does not have a town meeting system, right? Which is a little, but I'm sure you've got some, could you talk about your experience of like, trying to get public support for improvements to the school and making sure you're doing it in a long-term fiscally responsible way?
Yeah. So I think, we, throughout the process of the past few years in Franklin, it's been a town. I think back to the town meeting in Southborough this past it was May or June, and I think 2 weeks later, the override in Franklin failed, and so it was it was a real kick, and so I think those types of scenarios make you think about how are we getting the messaging across? How can we make sure that we're bringing people along? And I think, the decision for Franklin to be moved to this, to reorganize was done through a school committee process. And it wasn't necessarily about approval of the decision because the decision was made, but it was bringing people along to accept it. And I think I've learned a lot about that. I've learned about the importance of over communicating what's going on and what's happening through various different venues. So working to have in terms of wanting to make sure that I'm setting the narrative includes, instead of monthly newsletters, it's weekly newsletters, and organizing in a way in which we're providing the essential information of what people need to know, and then finding ways in which we can also bring information in which it's sort of the nice to know. Also providing, through text, also providing opportunities for in-person meetings and finding a way to be flexible with your scheduling, knowing that sometimes 6 o'clock might work for some people, but 9 a.m. works better than others, to be able to have some of these conversations to make sure that you're bringing the people along and sharing the opportunities for successes and making sure you're bringing the successes to life, making sure that if you're hearing the misinformation, you're getting out in front of it and articulating this has been going around. This is why this is not true. And also really making sure that the why is established and clear so that people can get behind that.
Thanks. Marguerite?
Who was the voice of that? Was that you, or was there a committee that was doing that? Who is like the public voice of the schools?
So our superintendent was the one who definitely led the charge because it was a K-8 reorganization with then myself and the principals of the elementary schools who were the public faces of it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Craig, thank you again for doing this. Again, you took so much time to write your letter and tell us about you and what a background. So, but back to your project for a second. What year was your project where the schools were combined?
So we essentially, it was decided that it was going to happen in 2024, like May of 2024. Then the school year of 2024, 2025 was the planning that was occurring while the other schools were in existence. So I was the principal of a middle school planning the creation of the new middle school during that school year. And then 25-26 has been the first year of its existence as Franklin Middle School.
So it's a new school or is it old school rehab?
So it's an old school rehab.
Okay.
So basically the way that the town had structured their schools is they had two standalone schools that were K-5. Those schools could no longer receive funding to be utilized as schools. So they're now town buildings. And then there were three complexes that were a K-5 school and a 6-8 school that shared the same building. There were three of those. They turned the one on the north side of the town to a K-2 and a 3-5 school. The south part of town, K-2, 3-5. And then they turned the one that was shared the campus with the high school. That became the middle school.
All in a year?
All in a year.
And were the kids not in these schools when all the building was?
So there didn't have to be any sort of massive construction that occurred. It was the moving and then the prep of the building that occurred. Really the move and the prep of the building occurred in June over the summer. It was a massive project.
Sounds like it. So, by the way, we don't expect you to be an expert in municipal finance. We've got, no, we've asked for a lot of background, so that will be covered by
Yeah.
others. We've got plenty of, we can get that other places. So it's your educational background is what we were looking for. Okay, so having said that, I'm still going to ask you a question about municipal finance. Do you know what the cost of that whole project was? Do you remember? If you don't, that's fine. I'm not trying to put you on
Off the top
the
of my
spot.
head, I do not know.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry.
I just
Yeah.
wondered. It was just.
Yeah.
wondering. But no, there's a lot of similarities with what you're talking about, with what we're talking about on a
Yes.
smaller scale here, but there are some definitely parallels here. So,
Yes,
but thank you so much for stepping up and wanting to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for being here. My questions you've already answered very well. My biggest one was kind of the misinformation fighting and the strategy behind it, but you just laid that out a couple minutes ago. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
First, thank you for being another new face. We need lots more of them. I often hear people who are part of sort of the school administration or really talk about, parents as their constituency. And yet they're elected by the entire community, and it will be the entire community that has to fund this. And so I'd like to in our community, only about 30% of the eligible voters are actually parents. So you've got to reach out to the other rough numbers, other 70%, particularly when you need 2/3 at town meeting, and in this case, it'll almost certainly be a majority vote at the ballot. And so I'm interested in hearing, how you reach the other 70%.
Mhm. I think that is one thing that I would say, I don't know if I have, the magic wand on that. Some of the strategies that I know we employed over the years when we were trying to get the override vote to pass. Now, they didn't work, but we believe they made them closer to than what it would have been. Really is about finding those community organizations and making sure that you work hand in hand with them. So, we worked hand in hand with our teachers union to go to many of the different, town council meetings to make sure that we were sharing our side of the story and our wants. Working with fire and police as well, other really important community members to show that the concept is, one Franklin, and thinking about this, that this is an opportunity for one Southborough. That we're all in this together, that our schools are our community, just like our, police and fire and different constituents are as well. I think we also did some conversations, reached out to senior centers and made sure that we brought them, actually invited them into schools as well, to have conversation about how, the modern education landscape has changed. And making sure that we're, and this was, it was changing pre-COVID, and then you have COVID into the mix, and that's just added a different dynamic as well, as we're overcoming those challenges. So I think that's, those are all the things about just the finding ways, and I think hopefully with combined skill set of everyone involved, being able to find, okay, what are the 70%, what are the groups of that 70%, and who are the people of this committee that's going to be able to connect with them best. They might not need to hear it from the educator who wants all the money in the world to make a great school, but someone who has a real strong construction background can really get to, well, actually, that's a huge, that's a ripoff. So I think finding who the speaker is and matching that with the audience is something that would be really important too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that concludes our,
Follow-up question?
yes, yeah.
So earlier on, you mentioned, we talked about physical characteristics, and you talked about the fact that, well, the hallway for a kindergartner, can be a very different size than a hallway for a much older child. And you said that when you put these schools together, there really wasn't much of a change. So what did I miss as far as how did you deal with that?
So how we
changing the structures much?
Right, exactly. So how we've had to deal with it is we've had to change the routes. So say from going to the cafeteria back to their classroom, they can't go up, they have to take a very long route to do that safely because they won't be able to go up a staircase. We have to have, different staggered, be very mindful of transitions from classrooms. And that impacts just, the overall functioning when a physical building does not necessarily match the needs. And that goes back to this idea of living through this professionally, and then seeing this happen with our schools here in Southborough. It's this parallel world in which I'm living in that has really called me and motivated me to hopefully be able to help.
Sounds like you did some with traffic flow, basically, when you.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, are there any other questions? Right. So then Al, yeah, do you have a?
No,
you wanna say something? All right.
no.
Okay,
Just thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we have it on our agenda to, at least for the school committee, we appoint 3 of the members. What did I say? I meant select board, yeah. Select board, we appoint 3 members of the committee. And I mean, my thoughts on this were that, you know, I was thinking like, in terms of the pool of people that I was thinking of moving forward for the select board were not the educators, but I think maybe just leave it to the school committee to, I think that, you know, there's really outstanding candidates, both Craig and Heather, my opinion, very good additions to the committee, but I think I was thinking of just having the select board focus on some of the other candidates. I don't know how others feel about that, but
School committee's plan is to not vote tonight and to vote Thursday?
Because we actually started shorthanded, even though we're more shorthanded now. We wanted to have 4 of our committee members participate in that. And so we'll be able to have that on Thursday.
So you'll pick 2 on Thursday?
Hopefully.
Yeah, okay.
so, I mean, one way we could go about this is we could just kind of go down and get people's thoughts on who would be people that people think there are 3 people that the select board could appoint tonight. And then we just maybe start to take some votes. Al, do you want to?
Sure. My top 3 are Tim, Heather, and Bob Moss. You know, I think those were the 3 best candidates. I think we ought to pick the 3 best candidates. I think that gets you some diversification of credentials, and so that's where I've landed.
All right, and then Tim?
Omitting myself, which I'm okay with because I'm already involved in this process, so I have really no hard feelings not to be here, although I wouldn't mind being here. I would probably put Mr. Pfaff, Bob Moss, and it's really, I mean, I think Heather and Craig are both extremely qualified, but I think Heather would be a great fit for this process, but I'm also okay with Craig getting it as well. I think both of them are very strong.
And Kathy?
So this is kind of unusual doing it this way, but so I would, if I have to name the 3, and I agree, the educators are great, and I'm just not going to put those in my pool tonight. But if I'm voting for 5, absolutely would, just so you guys know. So my top 3 would be Mr. Malinowski, Mr. Moss, and Mr. Pfaff.
Sorry. I'm in the same place that Kathy is. I think for the non-educator committee members, I would support Jason and Andrew and Bob Moss.
And I think that, I hope that Heather and Craig are on the committee, but I also think that Jason, Andrew, and Bob Moss would be good for the committee.
And I just misspoke. I cannot vote for Bob Moss, so my 2 votes would be for Jason and Andrew Pfaff.
Well, it sounded like, I think Bob was on everyone's list here.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we appoint Robert Moss to the Elementary School Building Committee.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Okay. And looking how we do this, I would move that the remaining 2 select board seats be filled by Andrew Pfaff and Jason Malinowski.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. So I think we have made our 3 appointments. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And then the school committee, you're going to meet on Thursday?
Correct.
Yes.
I think
12:30?
we're posted for 12:30 PM.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's
We
a
have the 4 of us.
virtual, or,
Yeah.
you know, for people that want to dial in.
All right. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
We take a little, maybe 5-minute recess.
Definitely.
Okay, so
Okay. Let's do Jason first.
Jason may need to call us because here's Capital, he's Capital. I don't know if they got.
And Mike Newt is online.
Okay, so you have a quorum?
I do. So I'll call the CIPC meeting to order at 8:14 PM.
Okay, so I guess where we left this was, I'm glad Al, you kind of held Article 13 for, before we vote on it to get more specifics, because we were really just poised to just say, please give us $25 million. And that was a good point to pause and say, okay, let's think this through a little bit more, right? What is the plan? So it looks like you put in a lot of good work to this, and I'll just turn it over to you and Bill, whoever wants to go first. I mean, you're not here, but you can see, like, we've got in front of us the memo that Bill put together and this Excel chart that's called 2026 pavement management implementation plan.
Yes. Vanessa, I'm not sure if you have that. We can put it on the screen if anybody needs to see it, or for the people at home, perhaps. So we spent some time in my office and with VHB preparing this, and we've gone through a number of iterations, and we're pretty comfortable that this is a good plan that addresses the vast majority of the issues in the town. So we've broken it up as my last presentation to the board indicated. We have, a 5-year plan, and through those 5 years, we have different categories of the type of work that we are proposing to be doing. Everything from major rehabilitation, minor rehabilitation, preventative maintenance, and routine maintenance. So each of those things comprise what we're calling the pavement management plan for the next 5 years. We tried balancing each year so that the $25 million request is evenly dispersed over those 5 years. So as I previously indicated, the year one work under the major rehab, we're focusing on roads that don't have really major underground infrastructure problems, but the surface is really in poor shape. And those roads are Acre Bridge Road from Marlborough Road to the Marlborough City Line, Northborough Road between Main Street and Johnson Road, Pine Hill Road in between the sections that we just completed, and Woodland Road from Turnpike Road to Bay Path Lane. Each of those roads has either no water or water that's in decent shape, as well as no drainage on each of those. So from a simplicity, from an engineering design and construction perspective, those are fairly low-hanging fruit to get the biggest bang for the buck, and we're fairly confident with the dollars on those roads. We don't expect many variables. With regard to minor rehab, we're looking at Corderville Road. We do have Corderville Road on a TIP plan. We don't expect those 2 TIP projects, which is Framingham Road and Corderville Road, to come to fruition until after 2031, 2032. That'd be the soonest they come in for construction. So they're in such poor shape, we need to basically give them some attention now and not necessarily do a major rehab, but we need to improve these
Bill?
sections.
Because that's a numbered road, a state road.
State road,
So
correct.
do you need to coordinate with the state and meet all, or the town?
So it's a state numbered local road.
Okay,
Okay, so the town has jurisdiction and control of it.
okay,
It's only a state numbered route in that section.
okay,
Okay.
gotcha.
So we're responsible for this section that you're talking about.
That is correct. So that's the benefit of the TIP project on both Framingham Road as well as Corderville Road, is the state's going to fund those projects. So with regard to preventative maintenance, we have Clemens Street and Middle, Clemens from Nichols to Pine Hill, and Middle leads way to Turnpike Road. And then routine maintenance, which is crack sealing, fog sealing, and patching. We have a number of roads that are on the screen. I don't know if we can zoom in on sections, Vanessa. But the patching, the last item in that lower right hand, really would address some specific problem areas. And that's why that number under the routine maintenance in that first year is so high relative to the other years, is because we're planning on doing patching. For example, Framingham Road, that northbound lane is just in horrible shape. So we would do what's called patch paving and address the worst areas with a more comprehensive, for lack of a better term, pavement patch or, remedy to isolated sections of the road. So year one, we're looking at a total cost based upon those listed items of 4.8 million. In addition to that, as you know, we're also targeting 4 sidewalks in town that's totaling about $2.5 million if we do all 4. Those sidewalk locations are Parkerville Road between Middle and Finn School, Richards Road between Cordoville and Woodland, Woodland Road between Richards and Oregon, and lastly, Oak Hill Road from the end of the existing sidewalk all the way up to Walnut Street. So that's year one. The subsequent years, again, we tried to pick the worst roads in town that are somewhat heavily traveled. So you may have a subdivision road that's in poorer shape than some of these roads, but it doesn't see the demand or the volume that would make it rise to the level to be competitive with some of these other roads. So that's the approach. The other thing on these subsequent years, and we plan on using our pipe camera inspection tool, is to basically inspect the underground infrastructure to make sure that it's in decent shape, and if it does need replacing, we will deal with it as part of this project.
Tim, you had a question?
I have a soft one to get us started here. Is there a warranty or anything on the vendor that would end up doing the major rehabilitation, that if something was to fail, if the roads were to crack, is there any sort of like guarantee on the work, craftsmanship and workmanship of that project?
Well, we would have ongoing inspections and quality assurance during the construction, but it's not that type of thing where you get a warranty on. It's you either approve it and accept it, or you don't, and you don't pay for it. So
if
it's that simple.
If it starts to fail prematurely, like one that comes to mind is Chestnut Hill Road that got paved within the last 2 or 3 years, and it's already starting to show signs of like separation and cracking, which seems like it'll be a problem sooner than later. That's something we just have to eat then after we sign off on it.
Yeah, that goes to routine maintenance. Okay, so, and this goes to, roads do start to fail within 5 years. Okay, so routine maintenance, and if we could take the lion's share of what we allocate towards our pavement plan and put it towards routine maintenance, we would cover more roads in town and lengthen the life of those roads. So if we're taking the money we get now, instead of having this capital plan or normal road maintenance fund expense line, and we put it towards the roads that need improvement, we're not addressing the routine maintenance. And that's where the problem is. So we need to really shift our approach, take care of the vast majority of the roads that are failing, and then take the lion's share of our money and put it towards routine maintenance.
Okay.
Bill, is that what Beta was talking about when they did their study?
It is.
That it's better not to let the road crumble and then fix the whole thing than to maintain it?
That's correct.
And this takes that into.
That's correct.
Was the selection of which roads based on the ratings from the pavement management system?
It's a combination of the ratings, and as I pointed out, year one, we kind of took a different approach. We took 4 roads, but that had little infrastructure. So that was the motivation for that year one. But with regard to the other roads, it had to do with the condition, the score of the road, but also we looked at the number of vehicles that travel those roads. So we
Yeah.
want to have the most people benefit from the expenditure.
Could you also just speak briefly? I know once a road goes down, it's painful to see it get dug up right away for a gas line or a culvert or any of that. And this has all taken that into account. You don't think there would be?
Well, that's going to happen over time. So for example, often the gas company will have upgrades to their technologies, their former technologies that they don't use anymore. And, you know, they'll make the situation safer for them. You know, like look at Porterville Road, look at Route 9. They made a mess.
Yeah.
So
They did, for sure.
my recent conversations with them, because I'm not impressed with their repair methodology, as we did on Pleasant Street, we have them do full width overlay instead of just trench patch. So we'll let them have a trench patch for up to a year, and then they'll come back and do a full width overlay. Now, that doesn't make sense for projects that are just coming off, like a new service connection. But for a gas line that goes the length of the road in a project like that, then yeah, we will have them do full width overlay.
So they repaved Route 9, which had been fabulous, and then they dug it all up for, was it gas?
That was gas, yes,
And then they have this bad patch in it that's like a trench
yes,
for about a mile.
that's right.
And are they gonna fix that? Or is it just,
To my knowledge, that's fixed.
okay, thank you.
Wasn't there a bylaw you mentioned that we could?
We could adopt I do maintain with contractors that come for road opening permits that we do have a 5-year moratorium. It would be better if we did adopt a bylaw that says that you can't open a newly paved road for 5 years.
Unless an emergency.
Unless it's an emergency.
Um,
Interestingly, what they did in Spencer to address that need is they had an escalated road opening fee. So the first year it was very high and then it dropped off. And by the time you got to year 5, it was a normal fee.
Good idea.
Al?
I've got a bunch of questions.
All right.
So in no particular, first off, thank you. This is terrific. Full disclosure, I live on Pine Hill Road, which is one of the bad roads, and it is heavily traveled. The first question I have is, you're proposing that the 21,900,000 and some odd all be paid for out of the proceeds of the borrowing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, because I guess I have a bit of a concern. I think this is going to get into the finance, which is capital budgets piece as well. I mean, I get the major rehab, I get the minor rehab. Those are all expenses with long expected lives. And that money is essentially payment for 30 years of neglect or longer, or underfunding, I guess we'll put it that way. I'm a little more concerned about the 2 categories that are described as preventive maintenance and routine maintenance, as to whether those are really proper things. It's not a lot, it's only a modest portion of the 21 million, but is that an appropriate thing to borrow money for, where it's routine maintenance? Should that really show up in an annual operating budget? What I want to, the situation I want to get away from is to use one-time capital borrowing to, forgive me, to mask the need for 2.5 override in general sense. So that's the question I have. What is the sort of, you know, in the preventive maintenance category, what's sort of the how often do you do that? Is it once every 3 years, 5 years? Is there a period to that?
Yeah, that would generally be about 5 to 10 year time frame on a road.
Okay.
Okay,
And then the routine maintenance is a shorter interval?
shorter, yes, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, so it does strike me that those are things which, I think for the routine maintenance, which again is the smallest item, I get it. But there we are, we're getting close to, actually, we're getting close to violating our debt policy. Where, we're really not supposed to be borrowing money for things with asset lives less than 5 years. And certainly if we're going to do a 20-year borrowing, I would prefer, I know this is late, we should have done this a long time ago, but I would prefer to see the 184,000 in an operating budget rather than in a, rather than being financed over 20 years, because that's, as a blended average, it's probably okay, but as an accounting principle, and I'm not the accountant here on the group, I have concerns about that, and I think we need to think through that a little more carefully, and I'm sure I'm going to have that conversation when the capital budget committee comes up. The next question I have.
You want to
Can I
stay
just-
stay on that one for a minute?
Oh, sure.
The accountant in the group and respond?
Yeah.
I agree with you. So, well, we remember part of the plan was to not do the annual $400,000 appropriations.
Right.
But coincidentally, if you look at the two numbers all the way down, they're about $400,000 if you add those last two columns. So we could just not do that and still do the 400, put it in, the annual warrant like we always do. Or you can always do a shorter term borrowing for that piece of it. So I think we got two ways to go here, but I agree with you that what's important is the first two as far as the capital piece, right?
Yeah.
And this two could just stay as that. And Bill's going to talk about the chapter 90. He's got the spreadsheet in here as far as that goes. So once he gets past the two tip project designs, he's going to have chapter 90 money too that he can use for this. So we could put this back in our operating budget and only fund those first two columns.
That would be that was actually my next question. You beat me to it, which was, as under the existing circumstance, we would no longer be doing was it roughly 480,000?
That's right.
That we have been appropriating in the past.
Correct.
And so, and in fact, if you add the 136 and the 184, that comes out to just a little over 300. So,
Seems consistent year over year.
yeah, I'm not surprised, potholes have got to get filled and cracks have got to get sealed, hopefully. Okay, but so that's my first comment, and I do think that's something we should address before, that we have sort of two paths we could go down here.
So just to
Yeah,
address, the operating budget this year does not carry the $400,000.
Understood, yeah.
But we can put it back in.
Okay.
We could put it back in, and I or maybe we put in the 300 and change, whatever the sum of those two maintenance numbers is, which would be less than 400, warm the cockles of my heart. Next item, as we present this is going to cover 30 some odd miles of road.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we say to the taxpayers, and to the town meeting, it's likely we'll see another one of these after 5 years. Now, that somewhere in the 2032 timeframe, we're going to ask for another one of these, because this is only going to cover 40% of the town's roads in terms of maintenance, and they all decay. I think it's very important that we are very upfront about the second and potentially third tranches of this debt. The next thing that I did a little digging, and it certainly looks like asphalt costs track oil prices.
That's right.
no secret. You know, West Texas Intermediate, WTI is currently about 66% higher than it was 6 weeks ago. And if you look at the futures markets, they're suggesting the price is only going to come down into the $75 range, which would make it about a third higher. There may come a point, depending, you know, because where it may make sense to delay for a year if, you know, if the price of asphalt is too high, because we're going to buy a lot less road for today than we could have bought 6 weeks ago. And, you know, the same thing, by the way, is, I think, true of interest rates. We need to be, I think, somewhat circumspect and about whether we actually let a contract based on our, you know, our expected oil costs, because, you know, it's not just asphalt, it's all the diesel fuel that goes into all of the equipment. You know, I'm sure you're already got, I hope you bought all your diesel fuel for the year already. Please tell me that's
We
true.
do it in big chunks, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we did it right before the conflict. We filled up the tanks.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
I think those are my principal. What number do you sort of use as a ballpark today for what it costs to do a major rehab on a mile of road? Do you have sort of a?
I'll give you a perfect example. Pine Hill Road, those 2 sections were about a mile. It was $1 million.
Okay, that's kind of the number. And what about for a minor rehab?
Minor rehab, I don't have a number to say, but I'd say it's a fraction of that.
Okay.
Okay. You're using much less aggressive equipment, and you're only using a fraction of the asphalt.
Those are my questions.
I have a follow-up to that one. In the major rehab, we're not accounting currently for any water or any other services that you would come across, correct? Right now, the number is just simply what it costs to take out the base, mill down the road, put a new base back in, compact it, put asphalt on top. So if we would need to touch something else while we're there, we're about to start going deeper and deeper and deeper.
If we encounter something, yes, and that's not atypical for a construction project to encounter unknowns. If we encounter ledge or, you know, something that we were not anticipating, yes, that would be an added cost.
And any water basins or any of that is not included in this current number?
No,
Okay.
but as I indicated, I'm fairly confident that these roads are fairly safe to do.
Okay, just double checking on those couple things on those.
Can I go next, Andrew?
Sure.
So back to Al's concern on the price of oil. Did you happen to put these numbers together after the Iran war started or before?
It was before.
Okay, so they don't reflect the jump in oil prices.
They
at all.
don't.
Okay. All right, so that's what I thought you'd say. So I don't have a whole lot to say, right? I mean, this is great, totally understandable. We will get to the point, remember the article that's in the warrant says, you know, 25 million, right? And we know how it's broken up between sidewalks and roads, but the motion, tonight we're going to decide what the motion's going to say. Do we want to ration it back to 8, 9, 10 to get you the money that you
I
need?
defer to the board. I
Yeah.
mean, I certainly respect that, you know, we do this in smaller tranches, as Al says. And then what that does, it allows us to still continue to assess the next year's unknown roads. And then we'd have a better handle on those unknowns and whether or not we need to do something about it. We need to replace a drainage pipe, for example.
Just so we were clear, I was referring to this entire program as a tranche.
Okay.
And then there would be a tranche after that.
All right.
And
Do you agree with that? Where did you get your 30-something miles? Okay.
I gave it to him.
yeah,
Okay.
I went to the source.
Do you agree that after those 30, then we really start over with the next 30-something? We have what, 67 total? What do we have here?
Total that we're responsible for.
Yeah.
I gotta
It was
find Al's email.
77, I think, was the number.
Well, 77's in everything, I think. We're all in on 77. 70.4 is
Okay.
what we own.
All right, so 70. So that other, and this is 30,
This is 33.
So the other 37 would then be the next group. So in other words,
Yes.
this is never ending, I guess.
Well, no, the idea is if you look at the chart, we're trying to move from the left side to the work on the right side.
Yeah.
And the work on the right side is much less expensive and you get more road miles annually when you do it.
Yeah, it sounds like there might just be one more tranche. It might not be as big as a project, a little probably cost more. But,
When a road is taken care of, how many years do we get out of it?
It varies. Okay, so if you don't touch the road, you're gonna get 30 years out of it. If you maintain it properly, you could easily double the life of that.
So it sounds like 2 tranches, and then you have it 20 years.
So what select board's got to decide tonight, once we hear from Capital, is whether the motion that we make at town meeting is going to have a different number than 25 million. But my vote will be at least a number that gets you what you need for that first year, including those 4 sidewalks, right? So that would be, that would be $8 million between those two, $9 million to give you a cushion, maybe, and maybe we say 10 because of the oil price. I hear, Al, interest rates, no one can predict, so put that aside for a second. But I don't know where this is going, right? So I don't want to delay. I really want to start getting those roads. We're behind because of the Main Street project. They just cannibalized the money for all those years. So I'd like to see these roads get started to be fixed, notwithstanding the fact that one of them is mine. So we just got to get that number. So 8, 9, 10, 10 maybe is a better number than 25. It's not going to change the budget. It's not going to change taxes. We're not drawing the whole thing down, but it might be a better look as far as what we present to town meeting. If we say 10, even though you're going to make a presentation saying we really need 25 over the next 5 years, but this year's tranche is 10 that we're trying to borrow, and the next year we'll be back with the next.
And this plan is certainly supportive of a smaller program and then come back in a few years and do another step. I wouldn't be opposed to that for a couple of reasons. Projecting 5 years out with these variables, those are all $26. Okay. So projecting 5 years out, we're going to have a completely different financial situation, both with regard to oil, with interest rates. There's a lot of variables that are unknown. If we encounter things, the scope reduces. So it's a work in progress. It's a living document that's going to adjust as we go through it. So,
But I just don't see how we do this any differently. We're so far behind, right? If we were to go back to our old way where we took the Chapter 90 money each year, took the annual town money, kept it for a couple of years, you're never going to get these roads done. So I don't see how we avoid doing the bond. But I do want to have discussion at the pre-town meeting. There was definitely those that were in favor of reducing that bond and said they just thought it would be a better look, even though it doesn't affect the budget at all. You're still going to borrow the same amount of money.
Sure.
Either way. Okay, enough for me.
I want to call attention. So Mike Newt, we brought him over. He had his hand up. I don't know if you have a question or a comment, Mike.
Sorry about that. It was just related to like the cost. I mean, in the roads report, the cost differences between major and minor rehab, minor was between 10 and 20 a square yard and major is between, 35 and 60. And, whereas preventative and routine maintenance are far, far lower than that. So, I mean, the idea with this was the thing that triggered this in my mind was Al's discussion of, we're going to have this again in 5 years. And ideally, in 5 years, what we're coming back to is routine and preventative maintenance, which is, related to another point that Al made, that maybe that should just sort of be in the budget. And maybe it should, but like the real capital investment is the groups in the first 2 columns. And, the idea, but behind the whole project is like not to be in the position in 5 years where there are more things of that, magnitude in those 2 columns. That's my understanding of the project. At least Bill can comment.
I did some very preliminary analysis to say, if we continue to fund this a la the traditional method, we'd probably have to go from the roughly 450 million a year, or 450,000 to about 1.2 million. And that would put you on that path that, if you recall the charts where we're going like this and you wanted to go like that, it'd be on the order of $1 million to $1.2 million a year of capital budget. And unfortunately, when you do something like that, you put a gigantic bullseye every year at budget season on that item, because, you know, well, maybe we can get away. We need another $300,000. Just to one thing to clarify, this brings 30 some odd miles of road up to a standard that we can then get into the positive maintenance routine. We still have another 30 some odd miles of road that will need to be brought up to that same standard. I mean, there's no shortage of roads that are falling apart in town. It's not a problem that's unique to Southborough by any means.
Now, Bill, when you say 30 miles, I assume you're talking about in the top two categories, right? That in that roads report, it says 9.6 in the major category and then 19 in the minor category. Is that what you mean by 30 miles?
Yeah. 30 miles includes the whole 4 categories: major, minor, preventative, and routine.
Okay, so
we're going to be in contact as part of this plan with the 33 miles.
So I'm just trying to understand compared that to the roads report, that final pavement management report that has a total of 72. And so it's got 10 in the top category, 20 in the second category, and then 16 and 18. So of the 30 that this addresses, how many in the top two, how many miles in the top two categories are covered in that
number right now? And I don't have that number right now.
Okay.
Is it a small percent that you weren't able to get to? I'm assuming it's because of complexities with those roads. So do you remember when you're thinking about it, was like a small number that you sort of just had to kind of push back a little bit?
What drove this was the budget amount, along with, we're fitting it in the annual program, but also the priorities on the roads.
Okay.
So I wasn't focused on how many miles per se. It was more driven by the budget.
And it wasn't necessarily a complexity thing, it was more of a traffic or other parameter thing to where it fell on the priority list.
Number of vehicles per day, correct?
Okay, got it.
Paul has a question or a comment, and then maybe we can shift to
I just want to make sure I understand where Al got his $1.2 million. So Al, you got $20 million in the first two categories, right? If you want to do it over 5 years, that's $4 million a year. So where do you get $1.2 million?
That was the number that I thought you would need to, on a continuous basis to, we've been putting 450 of our money, but the state's money is our money too, but our money. And we've gotten what we got, which is, our roads are headed in the wrong direction. And
It just seems to me like that number is much bigger than what you, so we can talk about.
oh, that was, $1.2 million forever.
Okay.
Well,
I'm not doing the forever. I'm just doing, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Paul?
So just to be clear, so, we're gonna, in this 5-year plan, very, very roughly, we've got 10 miles of major rehab, just using your $1 million a mile, and probably 20 some odd miles of minor rehab. So that's roughly, very, very roughly half the roads in town under that major and minor category over the next 5 years. That leaves, the other 30 or 40, which will need to be addressed as well.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, well, you guys know me. I've got 30 years of experience as a transportation engineer, designing roads and permitting them and sidewalk projects throughout Massachusetts and New England and for Mass Highway Department. Kind of projects, one of the main type of projects that I did categories was the Main Street project, streetscape improvements, Route 20 in Marlboro, that project, at least 5 or 10 miles. I did 5 miles in Sharon, plus the improvements in the town center for streetscape and stuff. Okay, one of my technical specialties is pavement design, pavement management. I work with VHB and Beta on projects in which we use the pavement program's recommendations to design the improvements and the rehabilitations of those roads. So I'm very familiar with pavement management. Just to go back, is that what happens is you get a crack in the road, okay? Water gets in the crack. Water gets in the crack in the spring and fall, when it freezes and when it thaws. Water's in the crack, it's in the base, it freezes and it thaws, it moves the pavement up and down. So the first thing, and my driveway is proof of this, you fill the cracks, okay? You prevent the water from getting in there. The other thing with pavement manages, you have the worst problems where they didn't provide enough base, the right kind of base. So you have a base that doesn't drain, okay? And this is what drives the different kind of failures of pavement. So when they do pavement management, they go out, they evaluate by section, is this got a lot of cracks? Is this got these alligator cracks? Is this gonna have to be dug up completely, okay? So you have a program here. These programs have been around for 20 years. They were developed by VHB
You think this is a
and by
good idea?
Beta. This is a tried and true pavement management
All right.
program. There's a program, they put all the things together and you determine what you got to do for this road. It's going to give it to the point where it's not going to deteriorate anymore. Okay, that's why you have the crack sealing and those chip seals and all those things. They're going to take those roads and protect them so they don't get any worse. Okay, I think that the projects for the sidewalks are a great way for the Board of Selectmen to show, and Mass Highway, that the town is serious about providing improved pedestrian access. And this will be the first of an important step in proving to Mass DOT that considering complete streets. Mass DOT does a big push, everything's changed, and they want complete streets. So providing sidewalk for safe pedestrian access, this shows that the selectmen are really doing something.
So
Okay,
you will come and support the article at town meeting.
absolutely. I plan to speak to both of these articles at town meeting.
Okay, good.
You've heard me speak before. The other thing about the sidewalk plans, and these are things that it's important for the residents to know, okay? Because there are going to people that are going to stand up is, I can't afford an increase on my taxes, okay? And I know that because I'm semi-retired and I'm on a fixed income now. I don't want the additional $800 on my tax bill. So I want to be prepared, and I assume the board is going to be prepared to address those comments. I mean, the roads, I guess, well, the other thing about the sidewalks, the other thing that should be mentioned is that these are major safety improvements. And all this roads and all this talk is about safety. Okay, so these sidewalks are going to make it safe to walk on these roads. It's going to make it safe. Everybody likes to walk their dog or their grandkids or whatever. And there's more people walking now than ever. The other thing, and I'm very familiar, and I just told you that with what VHB and Beta does, I work for both VHB and Beta. Okay, they're experts in this field. This work, as far as the program, I think the program should be put forward. It's a complete program, okay? It's not bits and pieces of a program, okay? They've identified what should be done to each one of those roads to protect those roads. This is a huge capital asset of the town. So how much is New Neary going to cost us? Roughly, very roughly.
Well, that's a huge.
Depends
thing,
on
so we
what
don't
project
know.
comes forward. So it could be
The new-
15 million?
The New Neary. We talking 45, 100 million?
Well, at
500
least
million?
15 million. Let's
Huh?
start there. And the probably floor is 15 million. The ceiling's probably, I don't know, 45, 50, 55. I don't know.
So the total cost is going to be 100 million?
No.
How much,
You know.
roughly?
If.
Depends on
This
the
is
option.
just
we
a-
don't
well,
know.
okay.
We don't know.
Based on the work so if we do, it depends on which project gets brought forth. So if it does the shorter term project, around 15 million. If it is one that completely renovates Neary for 50 years, it could be, I don't know, 50, 55.
But we're going to end up at the new school. You know that when they look at an old building, and he was just telling you, when you bring it up to code, once you crunch all those numbers, you're going to find that a new school is less costly than a rehab school. We made that decision on Woodward.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely, that's true.
So
but
what's the
that's-
rough number?
She just gave it to you. It's either going to be roughly 17 or somewhere in the 40-50 million dollars, depends on the option.
Okay.
I think the reality is that this program, if we go forward with it as a full program, and it's approved, would be the largest borrowing in the town's history. Will exceed that.
25 million is the largest borrowing. the
25
town-
million would be the largest. I went and looked.
Yeah.
This would be the largest borrowing in the town's history.
Okay, so this is,
Yes,
this is a large borrowing that is meant to retain your huge capital.
I think you're preaching to the converted.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think,
But
because I want to, because we're getting up to 9 o'clock here, and
Yeah.
I want to this is maybe a good, I want to move to the financial part of the presentation. at
I
some
just
point.
think it makes sense to approve the whole program now. You're going to go
No, and-
back and you're going, let me just finish. You're going to go back and you're going to have that argument that Al mentioned every year that you try and get that 5 million. The other thing is, the reality is.
Okay, so
Chapter
stop right
90
there. Do we ask for 25 here or do we ask for 8?
Well, I'm saying that you're talking about the chapter 90, okay? Chapter 90 does not provide adequate money for the maintenance of roads, period, okay? And so you can't expect that your DPW is going to be maintaining your roads in any way adequately with just this chapter 90. Now, the town is adding in another 500,000, right? Every year, okay? So that's a step forward. But Al, it's not going to cover the part that's in this program.
Agreed.
So anyway, I mean, you guys are on the right track, you know. I just hope that you guys are prepared with a modified article for the amount of money that you want.
That's
And
what we're gonna
I will
talk about.
speak at town meeting. You know, I want to support the town and the selectmen and the DPW in terms of making prudent decisions. But you got to realize this is a critical and a very valuable asset.
I agree. Okay, so should we move to I'm trying to move this along here. We've got some financial slides where, there were some projections done of how much, this costs principal and interest over the next 10 years. What's the impact on 4 different hypothetical house values?
Do we have this for the screen?
Yeah, Andrew, do you want me to walk you through
Yes,
what
please.
this is?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bill obviously did a ton of work to come up with kind of a broader plan. And that was one of the things that I had heard, both the select board and capital asking for in terms of where would this money go? Just knowing, to Al's comment, this would be the largest potential borrowing the town's undertaken. So what I did with Brian was to summarize kind of our existing capital position and then, show kind of the impact of a few different scenarios here, just so everyone could kind of be grounded. And then I think you'll see in our last slide really kind of gives you, 3 potential options to decide what your motion is going to be based on what you see. So Vanessa will keep going. So this is basically what we've already done, line 1 and line 2. And on average, we had been trending closer to the low 2s for a few years in terms of general fund appropriation dollars that go directly to principal and interest payment on capital items. We recently have approved a few other items, which you'll see in that middle column. And then the bottom line is the impact if every other capital article other than the roads gets approved at the annual town meeting. These articles would come, right before. So I think big picture, what this shows you is kind of our debt burden in the amount of general fund appropriation that was going towards capital was increasing quite significantly in the 28 to 31 or 32 time period, which is going to be the same time period of which, regardless of the level of programming you do here, these bonds would hit in full force. We'll go to the next slide. What this does is it takes kind of in round, we just rounded for ease, but I think you all can kind of do some rough math to get it down to precision depending on which program you go with Bill here, but kind of showing how the roads were bonded over the term of a 5-year period. So you have 5, essentially separate phases of roads, plus the sidewalks, which would be an immediate item. And you can kind of see that, very quickly, the numbers start jumping into the, 200, 735,000, then into 1 million, then into the 2 million, the phase in terms of annual appropriation. Now, the key thing to remember is that this is just the total cost of the new program. It has nothing to do with what we used to do in the past. That's what we've put up above. And my understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is that the FY26 budget that we're in right now did appropriate a road maintenance budget of $400K. But however, we've budgeted nothing in the FY27 budget. So we're actually going to go down before we go up if this gets approved. I just think it's important to be clear with the taxpayers that historically we have always had at least 400,000. So we're really not going to be seeing a true incremental until FY28 if you kind of ignore this 1-year FY27 event. Keep going. So what this slide really does is it allows each person in the community to kind of see what this program would take over the full term, the full 25, what it does to a tax bill absent any other considerations. The reason the 898,100 is not rounded like all the other numbers on here is that's the median home value, per the finance department at this point in time. So this just kind of gives you an order of magnitude of allowing taxpayers to kind of see the full cost of this program absent any other capital projects. So, if you kind of look to the median for a second, those are numbers that would start to get added on to the average taxpayer's bill, in addition to the debt payments we're already considering. So essentially you're doubling, like to put it in very simple math terms, you're going to be doubling the amount of someone's tax bill related to capital with this program compared to kind of what we're already carrying on the books. And then, not to belabor the NERI point too much, but what we did do is also show kind of, just so people can do math in their own head, is for every additional 10 million of capital spend over a 30-year bond period. So think large capital, like a building project, right? This is kind of what the incremental is per 10 million of spend. I think there's some argument that could certainly be made about when, depending on how long it takes for a project to get passed and then ultimately executed on, when this would actually hit the tax rolls. I think you're probably going to be looking closer to FY29 as opposed to FY27. But again, this is just to be eyes wide open to all parties without kind of trying to prejudge any outcomes on at least the only one large capital item that we're still aware of that has not been kind of contemplated here. So keep going, Vanessa. So full disclosure, Capital decided to vote at town meeting on this article. And I think there's 3 options in front of you. Is Article 1, option 1 is do exactly what you already have written in the warrant, is just give Bill the full authorization up front. Option 2 is to kind of find a middle ground and give him basically year 1 and year 2 of the roads plus the full sidewalk program. or option 3 is to just go with 1 year and bring a proof of concept back. I think ultimately this decision lies with all of you that would be making the motion in terms of what you think would garner the most support and whether we need what I'll call a trial period to get the residents comfortable with this large of funding. I don't think we need any discussion about the condition of the roads, but it's just about how much authority town meeting's willing to grant. Obviously, those that are on the select board at the time and the authorizing kind of future bonding payments and our DPW superintendent. So that's what we have in the finance. We'll be willing to leverage any of these slides for purposes of the town meeting presentation, depending upon the path that you decide to take tonight.
Well, all right, so I'll just begin with some kind of thoughts I had. I do like the idea of not moving for less than the full amount, just to kind of, demonstrate like we think we can kind of try this for a couple of years and get some good results. And I don't like the idea of just going back and just doing doing this once every year, right? It doesn't seem like we've committing to a long-term plan, but if we did something at first I was thinking of that $10 million figure, but now what I'm trying to add up is the cost of the first 2 years and then the sidewalk, which is going to make it closer to like 13.
That was one of his options up there. That's
Yeah.
what it is, 13.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Option 2.
2.7, 2, 7, 4, 5.
So they've got 1 year, 2
That would be
years.
12,297,840. So you would get the sidewalks done, like the first year, right? And then, I just think that you could get some more support for a long run if like this plan, where I think people be excited. I know I am, because some of these roads I'm very, very familiar with, to finally get these, done. And then people can kind of see, okay, my road is like coming up next if we just kind of keep committing to this. And about the, whether to have preventative
Handout at
maintenance,
town meeting.
routine maintenance in it. Like, I completely understand your point, Al. I just think like, we're just not, just practically, like, are we ever really going to get to it unless we really commit to doing it as part of this like one comprehensive plan? Like, it's great that we've gotten to this point because of my for the 2 years I was on advisory and then the first couple of years of select board, we just did the whole like $400,000 capital article a year, that's it. And then I definitely think there were some times where, DPW put in maybe a higher amount, right? And then, because we were just fixated on the overall number, we want to have a number overall year-over-year rate that's under this number. So then in that last session, we just, cut that number. And now we're just seeing
That's how we got here.
exactly, that's how we got here.
He's advocating the whole thing, the 25.
No, I'm not. I was advocating for.
For 1 and 2?
For moving, basically the option 2. Yeah.
Okay, all right, sorry, Andrew, I thought you were saying for the whole thing.
Well, how did we?
Yeah, that's what so I think we've already agreed, Bill's gonna shown the whole plan. That's gonna be shown, period. Then the question is, do you ask for the
All
bond
5 years?
authorization up front? You're still gonna only finance each year one at a time. So you're not gonna go and borrow any money till you need it. So it's not gonna cost the town any different, assuming interest rates stay the same. It's just a matter of perception. So I know that, I believe Mr. Malinowski thinks we should ratchet it back. I know Mr. Haggerty said the other night we should ratchet it back. So I'm all for doing what we think we could do to get this approved, because again, we need a 2/3 vote. This is 2/3, this is a debt article. So we've got to do what we think needs to be done to. hopefully
One
get this done.
consideration of this is, since we have the capital committee here, is, and we were talking about this a little bit at the pre-town meeting, is okay. To the point the point was raising, we can expect that people are gonna also ask questions like that. What's a rough estimate of how much we might be looking for NERI 2? Like, is it right that, okay, the NERI project and then this, like, is there anything else huge, big, significant in the next 5 years after that? I mean, I think.
Yes.
we have- What?
Wastewater plant.
We don't, that's a not, that is,
20 years.
That's self-funding.
exactly, that's not something that. have
I promise you in the early years.
You
it's
have to
not.
have a school, you have to have a fire station, police
I
station.
wish it were.
So do you mean that you think the roads and the school will be competing?
What I would, no, what I was saying is if you make these two big investments, I feel like you're over the hump. We're starting to be over the hump, and then there's not a. I know that means like the library
15 years.
expansion was on.
If you're, if you're looking at a 15-year time horizon, we're talking about Algonquin. Yeah, it's
Finn.
relentless. Finn, Algonquin.
Yeah, it would be 15 years down the road. I don't want to speak for Bill, but when you look at the capital plan, he has the largest capital plan in the next 5 or so years. And just watching, unfortunately, the number of failed culverts that he has inherited since coming to the town, those have been kind of the big unexpected ones that we didn't have any kind of foreshadowing of. So I think in terms of the unknowns, that's been the biggest surprise to us over the past couple of years. But assuming something happens at Neary, I think your school infrastructure would be in good shape for that 10 to 15 year horizon, regardless of what you do at Neary.
I have.
That
I have a
gives me
question.
some more comfort that it's.
Bill,
do it.
can you speak to the culverts? Are we looking at a lot more money for a lot more culvert problems? Or what is your,
I think the majority of the culverts that were installed in that same time frame of
70s?
1950s timeframe and maybe a little earlier are starting to fail. So that's why we need to inspect the pipes before we do the roads to make sure we're dealing with these issues before we pave the roads. But in terms of the two big ones, we have Willow Street, as you know, and we did apply for another grant. So hopefully we'll get that to help offset the construction cost. And we also have Northborough Road, which is in really bad shape and needs to get done.
do you see others coming down the pike, as it were?
Not that I've noticed at this point. But it's kind of
The
one of
best
those
of your
things
knowledge.
we're currently in a reactionary mode, which is never a good place to be. You know, we want to get out ahead of it, know our infrastructure, and then deal with it timely and plan for it.
Yeah, Tim.
If you would have less money, would you fundamentally change your plan if you had only a 2-year outlook?
No,
So the first 2 years in this would stay exactly the same.
correct.
Second part to this, how did we come to 2 years versus 3 years or some other middle term? How did we come from 5 to 2 for a capital estimation as the middle ground?
I rounded down. There's no precision, but I'd also say the only thing that capital entertained during the capital process was Bill did present the whole plan, right? Like in terms of where he was trying to go. We were very supportive of the concept of, doing something significant, but somehow between our meeting and the ultimate warrant, 25 million got printed essentially. So I think capital is very supportive of doing something, and my other fellow members can certainly chime in if they think differently. But it was just trying to figure out what's that magic number that we can actually get something done here and get Bill going. That's why you all have your coveted elected seats to kind of figure out how to thread that needle to get it passed. That's the key.
I would say to that point, the first 3 rows have the most roads. So if we're going to cut this back in any capacity, I would be supportive of keeping at least that 3rd year in there of 2028, because I think that gets a huge chunk handled in one swoop. I would be less supportive of only the 2 first columns to pull this back. I think having this bigger.
I think we're talking
We're
about
still gonna
rows.
get it
not
done.
columns.
We're just. talking
Sorry,
about-
rows. I mean, 2026, 2027, 2028 on the column, on the row spreadsheet. if we would do that middle tier that we just talked about, the 13 million, it would go up to, 17 million.
It's another.
It's another
million.
4.65 to that number.
Okay, so you want 3 years worth to
if-
bond up front.
If we
or to
consider,
request the authorization up front.
if we would consider less than a $25 million option for this, I would support the 3 years for it. Because I think we get a large quantity in those 3 years.
That's, it's a little under 17 million with the sidewalks.
Yeah, that's what I would support, if we pick a scaled back option from the full option,
As opposed to 12 million.
as opposed to the 12, which is only the 2026 and
So it's
2027.
another $5 million beyond 12.
So does anyone want to do the full 25 that we've got? So Michael New does.
Yeah, can I make like I'll just a weekly held counter argument. I mean, I saw when this first came up with capital, I raised the idea of like putting it all in one article because I generally sort of favor the idea of having difficult conversations with the town about, what it costs to provide the services that people expect. And the roads are one thing that my perception is that at least there's consensus on the need for fixing them. And I think I worry that if it's less than the total amount, that when the time comes to come for the rest of it, which is also going to be a big number, that people are not going to remember that when it was originally proposed, that there was a big chunk of the project cut off in order to make the number more palatable. And it's going to be a fight all over again, and that's going to crowd out other needs. I mean, I think on some level, I think the question, if it were me, to the town would be, do you want to fix the roads or not? And, if the consensus is, well, no, we only want to fix half of them, then that's great. But, I don't think any of us would argue that we should only fix half of the roads or 3/5 of them or 2/5 of them. So, if that gets voted down because the number is too big, then that's one thing. But, the phenomenon that was discussed in that BLS report on the town's financial management is that, by not having like a large amount of reserves hanging around, you end up in this situation, which I think Andrew just described, where, you avoid, big ticket things. And then when those things come due, there's sticker shock, so they become avoided again. And there's this vicious cycle where capital projects are neglected. And my developing view since joining the committee and, since being in town is that that's kind of where we're at. So, I think there's some benefit to the unpalatability of a big number and putting that in front of the town because it puts the decision to the town about whether this is a priority for them or not. It's my just general weekly held position.
Okay, I think there's some confusion here. We're not proposing to cut the program back. Bill is going to present the whole program, the whole $25 million. The only issue is, do we want to ask the town to fund the first 2 years at this annual town meeting and then come back the third year and do the funding? Or do we want to ask for the full approval to borrow the money when the time comes to do it or not? And what I'm trying to avoid is a negative vote and we get nothing because it's such a high hurdle. So I don't know what the magic number is.
Well, I think what Mike is suggesting is if you could, let's say we stick with option one, we just move the whole thing, okay? But then you're upfront with people and explain, we had this discussion. We considered doing this in 2 phases, but we want to put the whole thing in front of you now. And you can have the option, someone could amend this down.
Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I want to say this again. Bill is still going to show the whole program for 5 years up there. This is what I need to do to get these 30 miles of roads in shape. He's going to say it's going to cost $22 million to do that based on current estimates. Forget the Iran war impact at this point. This is what I want to do. And it's going to take me 5 years to get this done. So either we're going to ask for the full approval now so that when it comes time to borrow it year after year, That's already done. Or we're going to say, no, we're going to ask you for this much this year, but then we're coming back in year 3 and 4 and 5 to finish this up. So we are going to still try to do this whole set of roads. The question is, do we want to fund, do we want to ask you for the money now? Or come back 3 times?
If, but what that's exactly what I'm wondering. I mean, what's the upside of not asking for the full amount if you're presenting the full amount? It's, to me, it's that people, it just makes the number easier for people to swallow, but it doesn't change the number. And I think that's,
I'm going to
I don't know,
shock
it's
people.
not.
And,
Go ahead. Sir.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Al.
I think we should ask for the full amount. I think.
I am shocked. Okay, so I thought you were going, so I'm trying to go your way here, so I'm back,
Let me explain my logic
I am
here.
shocked.
One of the most ancient functions of government is roads, right? I mean, the Romans would have understood, the Greeks, the Mesopotamians, they all understood that you got to provide roads. And I think this is a place where we have the adult conversation with town meeting. So it's because at the end of the day, it's town meeting's choice. You know, if you're willing to live with the roads the way they are, there is a program for you. We have a program for you. That program is what we've been doing for the last 30 years, which is going to cost the town $500,000 a year. And your roads will probably slowly but steadily get worse. If you want much better roads, they're not free. I'm prepared to stand in front of town meeting and say this, you know, that, and it's going to cost, and they're not going to be cheap. And I think, you know, this is an adult conversation. You know, if you want the better roads, if you want Northborough Road fixed and all, you know, we all drive on the roads, we know what they're like. If you want the potholes to be.
All right, just, I agree with you. So like, I feel like, so
you
then,
didn't.
I think I am coming around to, I think the way Mike put it here, okay. I came in thinking I would go for the middle option here, but look, one of the things that I see the, first off, it would be a big deal if the thing got passed this year, then we have a.
Oh, this is,
We have
I'm not
funded
sure
a
you're ready. but-
comprehensive pavement management implementation program for the next 5 years, right?
And Bill, you'd
yeah,
be ready to start right away,
And
right?
look, if,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
That was one of my
you could also just be clear if, you know, if you have any discomfort about this and you want to split this into different parts, we could do that, but we don't really recommend it. And then, you know, see where, I don't think, Kathy, to your point, like, is the risk of moving for 25 is one of the risks you get nothing. I think that if we explain it the right way, the downside might be that it just someone decides to move it in a less, you know, amend it down and have it be less rather than the full amount. But because I guess the more and more I'm thinking, I am concerned that, you know, we know how we do things, and then with the idea of following up on something in 3 years, and it just doesn't happen.
I think to that exact point, the more things listed than not of the people I've spoken to about this, everybody's in favor of it. They want to see their road on the list. And if you start to cut the list down and not have the road on it, that's when you start to lose the 2/3 support. So we.
But we're
might
not
get
cutting the
more.
list down. I keep
The-
emphasizing this.
the
We're
way-
not cutting the list down.
But the by has essence of funding, if we could fund 25 or we could fund 13, you're choosing at what point that threshold changes of what you're kind of committing to.
It just says you got to come back and ask for more money to continue the program, is what it says. But I'm shocked that I think we should do the full thing. I don't know what Paul Semino would think if someone tries to amend the motion down. I don't know if that's in the 4 corners.
But what if it would be within the 4 corners? You would just choose, we would have numbers on the furthest right column that would have totals. So 4.87, you'd add 4.87 plus
I don't know that
4.682.
he's going to think cut in half. is
No, you just moved some motion to amend the article to reduce the number.
Yeah.
That would be totally appropriate.
I think as part of the presentation, given that we're talking about a 5-year time frame, we need to be very explicit about the risks. We have, because there are substantial risks here in terms of asphalt costs and interest rates. You know, if the world turns against us, we may not be able to complete all of these projects with the money allocated. And I think we got to be upfront about, you know, this was pre-Iran pricing. So, but this is the plan. And it's time to have the big boy conversation.
All right, can we just two quick comments and then, because I want to kind of wrap this up, because we're on the track of, we also have an executive session. This is, if this goes just too long, we're on the session of where we have important stuff. We're talking about executive session at like 11.
I think you have to go to the.
Yeah. If you can just go quickly. Well, I guess Tim was here first and then just really quickly that.
Tim Woodland Road. I'm in the camp of ask for it all because I don't think the work is going to go down. The work will only go up and the cost will only go up. And there's no difference, assuming the work is going to get done in terms of what we're going to have to pay. So all it is more overhead if you decide to chop this up into smaller pieces, and that just doesn't make any sense at all to me.
Okay, thanks.
Paul Curtis, 6 Hillside Avenue. I think we're at a tipping point, okay, where people driving in Southborough and saying, the roads are okay, you know, they got some problems. I almost lost my tire here. We're at a tipping point, okay, between people saying that Southborough roads are a little crappy and people saying that Southborough takes care of their roads, okay, like this town or like that town or that other town. So that's the difference we're talking about.
Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Andrew Pfaff, 50 Oak Hill. Yeah, I agree. I think the 25 billion is the way to go, the big chunk. I think the reason why we're asking for it, even if it was 10 million, is we've kicked the can down the road. The roads were always an easy target to cut. You know, it wasn't a necessity. We had other things that are more important, so on and so forth. If we cut it from the 20 million down to say 10, we're just doing the same thing. We're saying, you know, we're going to take another shortcut. We're going to come back to you again. Again, this is going to need 2/3 for borrowing and need to get a ballot. To do that every year, every 2 years is I think it's suicide. But
Well, that's my point too. I don't want to do it every year. So that's to me the reason you do this, get it done.
But I think the one thing that I've mentioned before that I just looked at the article and I don't think is in there is my assumption in the language was that it could be used for all road projects. But reading it carefully, I think it's only for the pavement management plan. We can't use it for sidewalks. We can't use it for drainage. We can't use it for culverts.
Right.
And I think that's a problem.
Well, we got to get the
Oh, it
sidewalks.
says it's Article 13 is to appropriate a sum not to exceed 22,255,000 to be expended under the direction of the DP superintendent for the cost to fund the town's road maintenance program, capital R, capital P, which this is, including without limitation, blah, 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 blah. And then further to see if the town will appropriate 2.745 million, and then it's pretty specific
Correct,
about.
but the road maintenance program is for the road surface, not, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, it
Correct.
doesn't cover culverts, doesn't cover sidewalks. Or could.
Yeah, that's.
My concern is that we approved 22.5 million to do these roads. And then while we're doing the road, we want to do the sidewalk, or we run into a culvert or a drainage issue, and we're gonna need another bond on top of it to pay for that because we can't use the 22.5 to do that work. I would like to see the 22.5 be able to cover all the work that needs to be done as part of these road projects, whether that be sidewalk, drainage, signage, whatever. I want to make sure that's.
We just can't go any bigger than we've already printed on the warrant.
No, he's not saying that. He just wants to clarify that with the
include
22.25, you can also do any drainage work, any culvert work,
Sidewalks.
any other side, not the four sidewalks. The
Not
four
the four
sidewalks are
sidewalks.
covered. They're
Sidewalks,
covered.
like if you were gonna use that 22.5 to pave a road that has a sidewalk, you would want to pave the sidewalk, assuming it's in bad condition at the same time. My worry is that the article for the bond wouldn't allow Brian to cut a check for that work. And we'd have.
So
to go
Brian,
for
can you
another.
check this out with bond counsel and find out whether we need to, at town meeting, amend this to include what Andrew's saying?
Or clarify it.
To make sure.
To make sure.
What wording you thought might give them the flexibility.
Yeah.
So I think you might want to do it in the wording you were getting at when you read.
Well, it's, yeah, it said and all other costs incidental or related therereto.
It
That's-
does.
I know.
So it may be there. Improvement, it says improvements.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah, good.
to move things along, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, so my motion is that we move the categories of preventive maintenance and routine maintenance into an operating budget.
All right, this is different than what I was thinking.
Okay.
Well,
I've seconded.
Hold on, hold on. Because we got to figure out how to get it in. We'll have to amend the budget then
vote
on
on
town
it.
floor.
Yeah.
Add it, but we can do that.
Let's vote
It's
on
not that much.
Yeah.
Can I
it-
just
it-
suggest that that would be limited to year one, and then I could pull that out separately in the subsequent years?
Yeah. Well, Al, I'm gonna let you complete. I was just gonna do a very simple motion that we just move to support Article 13 as it's.
Well, I
in
don't
the
think,
warrant.
well,
No,
I
this
don't-
is
we
just-
haven't
That's not what he's
finalized.
saying. He wants to take the category 3 and 4 here
Yep.
out, and that is a total of 1,200,000, so about 1,500,000, right?
1,500,000.
Yep.
Which would then reduce the total amount of borrowing, but would then, but Bill is asking is, we can put the,
I don't want my subsequent year road budget to be limited to those amounts, is why I'm saying. that.
oh, no, yeah,
Can we vote on Al's
Wait,
motion?
wait. He's not even, let him finish his motion then.
so, yeah, the motion was to take, well, all right, so we'll start with, the 2027 DPW operating budget would be increased by the sum of 136,755 plus 184,099 to reflect the preventive and routine maintenance categories, and that the overall borrowing would be reduced by the sum of those 5-year categories, which would be 1.2 million in preventive maintenance and 352,000 in routine maintenance.
So just say 1,500,000, right? Let's just
Yeah.
round it a little bit here.
Okay.
So that's the proposal.
Okay, so 21,755 would be.
So I
the
just,
bond.
I don't know if other people with me, so they're, like, we've already got in the printed warrant a DPW budget that doesn't reflect that. I've always thought you're not supposed, you can move things down, but not up. And then, so this is just too
You
confusing.
can move
for
them
me. I
either
would
way.
just-
You can move them either
It's,
way.
you know, I would just support Article 13 as it's printed in the warrant.
So
I'm with Al on this as far as separating out the category 3 and 4. I think it's easy to do.
But the preventive the routine maintenance actually violates the debt policy, which I opposed and everybody else, except for Tim, voted in favor of. So you're hoisted on your own petard.
Hold on.
What?
Yes, wait. Paul, you can't,
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we call it, the categories are preventive and routine. That's what we're trying to carve off 3 and 4.
Paul, you gotta, we won't let you just talk out of the audience.
Now, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. If you look at his chapter 90 schedule, it's got a negative 300 something thousand bucks, but when he gets his fiscal year 27 allocation, that will make that positive. And so he's going to have that money too, to be able to use for roads. So he's got a cushion here, even if we do this. So I think Al is right. It's a little hypocritical not to abide by the policy that we approved. So I'm fine taking the 1,500,000 out of the bond amount and putting $400,000 back in the DPW budget for fiscal year 27. Is that right, Al? That's what you want?
Yep.
I don't
So,
agree.
so if I'm following this correctly, that means the rest of those 2 columns
Would,
go into an operating budget year over year.
yep,
Okay, so that's the preventative maintenance and routine maintenance becomes just funded from the general levy. limit.
general fund, yep.
Okay, got it. So now that I'm following that piece, that also changes the capital projections
Yep.
that we just looked at. So
You would reduce them by about 1.5 million.
of those year on year, the piece that I'm going to ask about specifically, the year on year house averages, it doesn't, they're going to go up a little bit from a tax bill, but they're going to go down from a borrowing perspective.
That's right.
correct?
Right.
Mhm.
Okay.
same amount of money.
Well, no, a little bit more per year, I think, in the tax bill unless we get tighter in our budgeting.
Well, you're right,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the debt service on $1,500,000 is not $400,000 a year. So you're right, it's probably
Yeah,
gonna increase it a little bit.
The
Yeah,
Not much.
27, the 28 tax bills would be slightly higher.
Yeah, so unless the overall budget for the year, we would have to just be aware of this operating costs within that number. Okay, I think I fully understand what you're saying now.
You know, another upside of that is that the preventative and routine maintenance really are a thing that is recurring. And so at the end of 5 years, people will have the expectation that like that is a recurring part of the budget, whereas they don't need to be borrowed for. And you know, it's built into people's expectations at that point.
All right, so it sounds like the three of you support what Alice, right? So look, I think this is something we should try to, support unanimously, so if, I'm okay with it. I just don't like things that get this is sounding kind of complicated of the different motions.
And it's getting late and we got a lot to do. So the motion's going to be to change that 22 to 55. Brian, check me to 20,755,000. And then we've got to hold the DPW budget and move that up $400,000.
Bill, is there any reason to not do it the way they're suggesting?
No, I tend to agree with what Al's suggesting, actually.
Okay.
All right, so
We did this because it did get that pavement maintenance got pulled out of the budget.
Got it. All right.
I'm wondering if Mr. Pfaff has an advisory perspective. I don't understand because he typically does.
Not speaking as for, not speaking on behalf of advisory, but I can give you my 2 cents. I think what you're trying to do right now is very messy. It's going to be a disaster on town meeting floor. The 22.5 is a bond authorization. It allows Brian to do a bond. He can also pay it as cash. It's just authorizing the spend. You don't have to bond it. So that 1.2, I mean, you guys have to approve the bond. Could just be straight cash or a 1-year bond or a 3-year bond, whatever you want to do for a bond policy, if not bonding something over the life of and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but if you do a minor rehab or maintenance, the life should be more than 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, right? You could bond it over 5 years and then you could do the other 20 million on a 20-year, right? You could do that.
Yeah.
But I think what you're trying to do here, and then we can have a conversation next year in terms of whether or not we want to shift those roads that are in the out years into more of the BAU road maintenance budget and then add more major and minor rehabilitation roads into the bond, 22.5 bond. But I think what you're trying to do at the 11th hour in terms of amending on the town meeting floor is going to be very
I
confusing.
don't think it's that messy.
Well, also think it through. So then the operating budget's gonna come up and then someone's gonna hold it and then.
We're
the
gonna have
selectmen
to
say,
hold it
We'll have to hold it.
Advisory is going to have to revote it, all that stuff.
With, yeah, let's just keep it simple.
So the bond piece is good news to me about the splitting up the years. I didn't realize, we had that level of flexibility with this.
And he can borrow any way he wants to.
Would we lower the number? Would we, so in sake of simplicity, just thinking this through, would we eliminate years 27, 27, 28 through the last year on here? In those columns of the numbers, we'd lower the overall number by a smaller number, not the full total of those 2 columns. Leave the bonding happen this year, then fix it in subsequent years. Because right now we would theoretically approve a borrow at a higher rate than what the operating cost would end up picking up.
Okay, so Al, there's one practical consideration is what Andrew just said. Advisories already voted on this budget. And I wouldn't want them to stand up and say they're against that amendment. So that I wouldn't want to
Keep it
happen.
simple.
Well, you may recall I've occasionally complained that we don't meet with the capital budget committee often enough. And this is a good reason.
All right, well, whatever we do, I think it makes sense to try to do this unanimously, right? So again, I think it makes sense Andrew spoke to the point there. Let's just try to keep this simple.
Does the bond
Like
piece,
this-
the 1
this-
year, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. The bond piece, the 1 year, does that fit within the bylaw? Is that allowed?
Well, so we adopted a set of financial policies, one of which was about borrowing. And I believe we said there was a certain number of years that we shouldn't borrow. We shouldn't borrow for things that are under a certain have an expected life under a certain number of years. And I don't remember what it was, but I think it was 5.
But the bond, that bylaw specifically, are we
That's not-
within the confines of the
But we wouldn't do
bylaw?
that, Tim. We wouldn't do a 1-year.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just, that would make no sense.
But we would be, okay, so whatever the term would be, we would be within the bylaw if we left this 25-year or 25 million 5-year plan as it sits today without moving anything.
No, I don't think so. The policy that we adopted says that you're not supposed to borrow long-term for something that is short-term. You're supposed to match the
Okay,
borrowing
so we're
to-
against the bylaw. That's, that my
It's a
question.
policy, it's not a
The
bylaw.
policy, so
Yeah.
we're against the policy.
Sorry, that policy.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I move that we support.
Wait, there is a
Article-
motion on the
well-
floor.
Well, there, I move that I don't think you completed yours, so I'll just give it a shot at mine. I move that we support at town meeting Article 13 as it's printed in the warrant.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Passed.
Who was the third vote?
To me, I think that we're gonna move, if we.
Three, all those against? All right, so
Okay,
it passed 3-2.
moving on.
We just decided to
Keep it
just
the way it is.
Keep it the way it is. Yeah, 3-2.
And make sure that we check
can
with
maybe
town council
revote
to
this
make
then.
sure Bill can use the money for culverts, whatever else he may have to do to get the road done.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that there was a motion that was seconded and that was made and seconded, and you stepped on it.
What, I don't think you completed it.
I made a
I
motion
think he did.
and Marguerite seconded it.
But then you kept going on it, Al. You added more things to it.
All right, well,
This is not a way to get something, to get 2/3.
well, okay, I wasn't expecting that this discussion was gonna become so complicated here, but
This is the largest
Yeah,
borrowing
yeah.
in the history of the town if it's passed. And, frankly, I think this board should be ashamed of itself. I'm sorry, you can shake your head all you like. I think you should be ashamed of yourself that this is the first time we've had, this
I
has
don't
been
need
an
to be-
excellent
I don't need
discussion.
to be lectured by you about things like I feel ashamed of myself, all right? So,
Andrew, we did adopt a debt policy that says exactly what Al said it did, and this is not necessarily in compliance with it.
But there, it's a
Public safety building is
long-term-
25 million.
It's a long.
Okay.
The land was 5 and the building's 20.
all right.
Well, I think those
Well,
are
this is
different
probably
things.
something a discussion we'll need to clean
So-
up at
so
the next
right
meeting.
now
on the
we're-
7th, But
Right now, we just voted to take this forward as it sits, right?
Yeah.
Now, if
Yes.
council comes back or there's something that's on the line, then we're gonna have to revisit this
Deal
anyway.
with it later.
So, I mean, I'm assuming that everything that that I agreed to here to move this forward as it sits, for simplicity's sake, is gonna fit within the confines of, the legal terms we have to abide by. So that's what I'm assuming we're gonna get an answer to.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, well.
I'm gonna move to adjourn the CIPC. Is there a
thanks.
second? All right, I need to do a roll call vote.
Jason, Brian, good job on this report. Bill, great job on the report.
Thank
Both of
you.
you. Clear, great, and concise.
better at the
Good job.
Mike, I need to do roll call. Just say aye.
Aye.
I'm aye and Mike End.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
you. Good night.
Pleasure, everybody.
Just tanked it, but.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to say here.
So Paul, you're going to stand up and support the article? Okay, good. You help get the park passed, get this one passed. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Hey, it's only your area of expertise. Why should we listen, right? Seriously.
All right, so turning to reports, I don't have anything under chair support. Mark, you had a town administrator report?
I got a member's report.
Oh, you do? Okay.
And this is good news, so important. So I attended a meeting yesterday at the Department of Transportation in Worcester. What are we, Region 3, Mark, I think, with the Atlantic folks and with the Costco Transportation or Traffic Study guys, the consultants. And the purpose was to try to understand whether the project has to go through MIPA approval, which would mean another year onto the construction period. They didn't give us an answer. I thought the meeting went really well. Barry Lorian is clearly a good guy. He's head of the district. So we're waiting for an answer, but
Hey, guys. Can you want to, maybe you can just talk outside because it's really loud.
It's okay. Anyway, this is important. So it's either, so Costco also, we had a meeting a week before that with the guy that's actually going to build it. He's in charge of all the Costco building projects on the East Coast. Really good guy. And believe it or not, they can put a Costco up in 180 days. They can start moving inventory in 90 days. If we don't have to go through this MIPA process, which right now, I think there's a good chance we're not going to have to. So does Bob Buckley, their zoning attorney. Then they'll be open Q4 of 27. So before we end the tricentennial year, before Christmas. So anyway,
Good news.
yep.
All right. Does anyone have any holds on the consent agenda? I'm going to hold the March 17 minutes. Are there any other? B?
Yep.
Okay. Anyone have any edits to the March 3 or March 10 minutes?
No.
Okay, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from March 3rd and March 10.
Second,
All those in favor? So for the March 17 minutes, the edits I had, line 117 and 119. LRB should be Alvati, Alvati. And then on line 151, there's just a word missing. The board reviewed the list of articles.
151.
Yeah. Okay, so I move that we approve the March 17 minutes as amended.
second,
All those in favor? Okay. So Al, you held the DPW appointments.
Just so we could have a separate vote.
You want to explain what you're
Oh.
looking? Bill, do you think that we should fill these positions?
Yes.
You want to come up and explain it?
Yes, we have two positions available. We have two candidates after an interview process. We found that these two individuals met and exceeded in some cases the criteria for both the positions. One's an equipment operator too, and the other is a truck driver laborer.
So these have been positions that have been vacant for some time or?
Well, we've had some turnover, some level of turnover. So some of these people have either vacated the position. Actually, one was due to the excessive snow plowing, as you might expect. And another had a family issue that he had to move down to Florida. So
Okay.
How many vacancies do you have after
this
these
would
two are
make
filled?
us complete.
And the risk with not filling these right now?
Workload.
Okay, I move that we approve the DPW appointments.
second,
All those in favor?
No.
Okay.
The same reason I don't think these should ever come before this board.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Can-
It's
Can
not
we,
that you don't think it should be filled. We just shouldn't do it.
can we do
So
something? to
this-
change that?
if we're not asked
No.
to open the position, we shouldn't be asked to fill it. You know, nobody asked me for permission to hire, so
Gotcha.
you'll be rid of me soon.
Thank you.
6 weeks.
Thank you, Bill.
Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Bill. Thanks, Bill.
you too.
Okay, so the last item we have in the open session agenda is the annual town meeting prep. I mean, I think basically we just, Mark sent around a list of yeah, motions and proposed assignments of who's going to move what articles. The only one that I would like to, Al, you are currently set to move the tricentennial zoning bylaw that's sponsored by the select board. And maybe we can do a swap because I would prefer to be the person to.
Be my guest.
Okay, all right. Is there, you want to take one of mine?
You got any ones that are on the consent list?
Sure.
No, I- Let me
What
look- let
about
me look
the
here.
capital budget existing leases? That should be a
Yeah.
consent, right?
It should be.
He's gonna have what, 17 or so on the consent is what he's gonna start out with?
That's the thought.
That's good.
You know, after his pre-town meeting, there may be others he's considering, so but you never know until he releases it, and it's usually a couple of days before town meeting, so. But a large number of these ones that you've been assigned motions for,
Whatever, yeah, whatever you'd like to give up.
Al, do you want to do I'm doing the roadway. You want to do the roadway and sidewalk one?
Sure.
Okay, so change that to Al.
Well, just there not to reopen the whole thing, but you just voted not to support it though, right? So does it make sense to make the motion if you don't actually support it?
He didn't say he was gonna vote against it.
All right.
It's up to you. So I just thought, Al, you might want to do that one because it's very important, so.
No, I think you would be good to speak to it. It's just, maybe we'll just take this up again at the next meeting on the 7th.
Okay, but change it to Al for the moment.
Sure.
And I'll change 32 to Dennington.
Good. I don't think I'll have to do any of them. Mine are all gonna be on consent.
You're gonna do pilot payments since you're the pilot payment person?
That's gonna be on consent, so it doesn't matter.
All right.
All right. Is that it? Then I move that the board enter into executive session and not return to open session for the following. 1, to discuss contract negotiations with the Mass Cop Local 523 Exemption 3. And 2, to discuss contract negotiations with the finance director and DPW superintendent Exemption 3 as the chair is determined that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's position. For a second?
Second,
Okay, I need to do a roll call vote. Dennington, aye.
Landry, I.
Cook, aye.
Flint, aye.
Hamilton, aye.